Welcome back to another episode of Talking Tarkov. I'm the EarLegAthlete here with,
Hey Dizzle.
and today we are taking a look at the newest Nikileak and then switching gears to talk about some of the things we find most interesting about the Escape from Tarkov lore. We are specifically covering the 3 books by Alexander Kantorovich, which if you don't know anything about, we will be following the journey of Dennis, a systems admin for Terror Group, as he fights his way through Tarkov immediately after the EMP was detonated. So let's get right to it. So first and foremost, we've got the Nikileak. Some pretty cool stuff in here. I've had a busy week, so I haven't been able to watch this a whole lot. Yeah, we've got starting off with either the AK ASMR, which we don't know exactly which AK yet. Maybe they are also just recording gun sound, which that one doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's recording the gun audio specifically. I think it's for the ASMR, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Because
it
the sounds already are
doesn't
really
have the
good.
gloves on and stuff, so it could be a practice run.
Could be a
But
new
it also
AK.
could just be new sounds. Yeah, that's also true. It definitely appears to be a 74U
Yeah, it is pretty
just by
short.
how short it is. Yeah,
That's true.
yeah, and but it could just be new sound rework for the gun. Consider it is a very old gun. It's been in the game for a very long time.
That's
Might just be
true.
updating the sounds.
They're updating the customization of the gun already. Being
Right.
able to do the top dust cover, lower dust cover, or dust cover.
Top, upper, and lower dust cover.
uh, of your God damn it. The upper part of your rail and the lower part of your rail. What the hell? Handguard. Your handguard. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, they're
But yeah,
updating the layout of the gun, the way we customize it. So maybe they're doing updated sounds for it. Like you said, it is one of the older guns. It's not. We know they've done a lot of sound updates, but we don't know if they've actually updated the AK animation sounds and things like that. So it'd be cool to see,
well,
find out for sure.
they did just show a bunch of new AK revamped animations, and they're also doing a lot of revamped gun sounds. So it's
Right.
very possible they're also just revamping all the sound for every gun in general.
I mean, that would
I mean,
make
I doubt
sense,
it's for
right?
every gun, but probably for the
Right, but the
older guns.
majority, yeah, the majority of the
Yeah,
stuff
the
that
older guns
needs
that
the
have,
reworks.
yeah, that's been in for a long time, and maybe just giving it a little tune up.
Yeah, one thing I just noticed that I do wanna point out, the shirt that the guy is wearing here, whoever it may be,
Yeah,
that
yeah, it
is
is.
the
It
shirt
is.
from that's crazy. I hope that all the clothing stuff that they've been teasing and showing off actually becomes available in a
Yeah,
legitimate store that stays stocked so I can actually buy merch because that's one of my
yeah.
gripes with
Basically,
Tarkov. This is a little thing to the side, sure, but like the stores there, they show off a bunch of cool stuff and then like you go to get something and it's like, oh well, that's not available. That's sold out. This color's sold out. Like it's not available. We don't have that anymore. So yeah, it'd be nice if like they do an updated store that actually stays stocked where we can buy EFT and BSG clothing. Like that would be sick.
yeah. What we're talking about is they recently showed some new skins that are coming in the game. Well, new clothing and things, and the shirt this guy is wearing is an exact replica of one of the skins.
Yeah,
So possibly IRL in-game store.
that would be
Or out,
awesome.
not in game, not in game. Sorry, IRL store with in game
IRL
items.
store
Is
with
what I meant.
in-game items. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. IRL in
real
game store.
life. Yeah, we started off strong
Oh
today,
shit.
guys.
Yeah, yeah, we're on it. We
Upper
are
and lower
on it.
dust covers, IRL in-game stores. In real lobbies is what IRL stands for, in case you guys didn't
Yeah,
know. But no,
yeah,
yeah, seeing that is really cool. And like
yeah.
we've seen the Killer shirt, and we've seen like a handful of people wearing it, and then Den was like modeling it or whatever. Like he like had it on out in the real world. He had like a jacket over his shoulder and shit. Um, but yeah, like I don't know, it would be awesome. I'm hoping this is all just like big build up, and at the launch of 1.0, potentially they're like, oh yeah, check out the store. You know, maybe who
Right.
knows. But yeah,
Yeah, I
new
could see him do
new
it.
AK sounds and stuff like that seems cool, seems awesome. Updated AK is fine by me. It's needed,
Yep.
and more customization is always welcomed any day of the week. I love it. So yeah, glad to see it. Glad to hear it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
All
Now we got
right,
Nikita.
this is an interesting one. Yeah, we
Yes, it
got
is.
Papa Nikita. So you had a pretty interesting take on it earlier. Was that something you'd heard,
Yeah.
just, like, people saying throughout the community, or
Yeah, it
is that, like,
was
the hot take at the moment, what people are thinking?
I had watched, Axel kinda review this Nikileak, and I think him and some of his community had guessed that this is either from an upcoming event or maybe from 1.0, but it's gonna be a cutscene with Nikita in it, or maybe Nikita as a character in the game, something to do with Nikita in the game.
Yeah, which I wouldn't doubt. We haven't seen a Nikita cameo that I know of, like, an actual, Nikita in the game.
Right.
So that would be interesting. This could also be Chronicles of Rizzy stuff. It could be, for the event coming up, like with last time they did a little bit of stuff for it. They may be doing a another take on it. It does that. I have no idea what's actually going on the monitors. I did think that at first that the left monitor kind of looked like it may have a maze or hallways or puzzle or something, but at the same time, like they could just be staging and sitting in there for whatever reason. Though
Right.
upcoming in the video, this is Nikita at the monitors, and another image we'll see soon with the red flashing light is also from the same take. It's Nikita
Yeah.
sitting at the monitors when the picture's shown anyway, so we'll see that again in a second. That's a pretty interesting thing too. But yeah, Nikita, and the reason why that we think he may be coming in game is a little bit ahead as well. But yeah, and then we have the MCX skins, which is sick. Looks good. Fully skinned guns are great.
Yeah.
Just to
Which there
point
are some
out,
custom parts on there,
yeah,
that already have skins in the game, but I don't think the MCX has any skins as of right now.
yeah, I know
So,
the rail didn't. Without a doubt, the rail did not.
right.
I can't remember if the upper and lower receiver did or not. I don't
Yeah, I
think so.
honestly
I'm
can't
fairly
remember.
certain they didn't. But
Is
yeah,
that
like
a
butt stock.
recognizable skin, or is that a whole new skin?
No, that
Or
is one that we have already.
okay.
I have that one unlocked, I think. But yeah, that is the upper and lower. Oh, it's a stock butt stock as well. So that was never an option to be painted either. I'm wondering, because the gun below it also has the same skin on it. I'm wondering if they're just going to allow us, no matter what part it is, to just paint the fucking gun, right?
Yeah, eventually that's what they said. They wanted it to be able to just cover anything. At least that's what was talked about before they were actually added. So I don't know if they're continuing with that or if they've changed their mind, but hopefully they're continuing to
Oh,
just let us
okay.
completely modify.
Yeah. Also, I noticed that this isn't just two guns. There's three.
Yeah, there's one above it. Yeah, one
Yeah,
above, one
which looks
below.
like an M4, or maybe that's a short mag, maybe the 7.62 variant. What is it called? The SR-25
Oh yeah.
potentially. And then below it, I was
I,
thinking maybe an SA-58, but maybe an LMG because of I can't tell if that's the slotted barrel or not.
what this could also be, this is kind of just guessing, but this could be showing like the new versions of the MCX, maybe the multi caliber, maybe you got the big caliber above or below, 5.56 above, normal 300 blackout that they're showing right now, possibly,
Maybe, yeah,
maybe.
maybe. It's hard
Because
to
it's been
tell. It is
rumored
hard
for
to
a long
tell.
time that it's coming. Like
Yeah.
they've definitely said they're adding, the family, so it should be coming soon.
Which I think we speculated on this last week, but I feel like 1.0 is just going to have so many new
Yeah,
guns. I
it's
mean, we could be wrong, but I feel like they're going to introduce a lot of the guns that they've said, like, yep,
yeah,
we're working on it. They're coming.
yeah.
And there's
There's
stuff
some
that, they've
that
talked about in
was
the
like,
past that
well, there's
just
some
kind
that
of
were
got brushed
shown
under the
years
rug,
ago,
too. Yeah.
and I'm sure that they are just putting them off so they have a good amount, to add to the
Right.
game on release.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah,
Trying to make out what that gun is above. I'm not 100%.
yeah. It's
I'm
so
not going to put
hard.
too much time into
It's
it.
so
There's so,
blurry.
yeah. It is a,
It is a gun.
yeah. All right, and then here's the next crucial piece of the puzzle. This is how we know Nikita's going to be in the game. There's a saw.
Yep.
No, I'm joking. I have no idea what this is for. Probably for one of the in-game cutscenes, or maybe at terminal, like things are just happening around. I don't actually. That's not the case. That's not true. That wouldn't make any sense at all. Probably
Probably
in-game
closer
cutscene.
to, yeah, motion capture for in-game cutscene
Yeah,
would be
maybe
would be my guess.
even potentially
Well, I don't
something in
know.
the Chronicles of Rizzy, but I
There's
can't imagine outside of a cutscene. maybe
Yeah,
recording
and there's no
audio.
like, yeah, it might be audio because there's no like motion capture.
That's true. There's
There's
no
no like,
mocap stuff. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's just so it might be audio. Might just be a cutting wood sound. Because maybe we can
there is
craft
a cable on the
hideouts.
bottom right. You can see kind of running through. It's labeled like typically like their microphone setups are, which I mean makes sense. They're obviously
Hmm.
maybe not.
Yeah, who knows? Very weird.
Something vibrates down there. But then yeah, so probably cutscene audio stuff. I would imagine that makes the most sense. I guess
Yeah,
maybe something for Chronicles of Rizzy if they're like fortifying an
or
area, but he was also cutting tongue and groove right there. So like that's the thing that doesn't
could
make
just
sense. It's
be,
click lock flooring, so it's like he's not
yeah,
doing anything with it. They
it
could
could
also
just
just
be
be
in-game
replacing floors.
audio. Yeah, it could just be in-game audio for like possibly something in the storyline where you have to cut a tree or something. Like who knows?
Yeah, it's so
So
hard to
many different
tell.
ways it could go.
Yeah. Same for this next upcoming spot here. This could go 100 different ways. Well, not 100, but a
Yeah,
couple different ways.
yeah. We
I'll
do
go ahead
know
and
this
play
is an
it.
in-game.
Yeah, that is clearly an in-game action.
Yeah, I mean it might not be like a player like
Yeah, not
performing the
like an
action.
action you can do constantly. It's not like a new breach mechanic. At least we don't think it is.
It
Um,
could be one of those things where you like not a like whole like scene, but maybe like you walk up to a door and you need to get in it, you hit a button and then it switches to
it
this
goes
really
through the
quick and
motion.
shows you,
Yeah,
yeah, shows you opening it, and then it cuts back to you having control maybe. Or maybe you do have control. Maybe you gotta like tap a key as this is going on. Like it's so hard to tell because we just don't know how they're going to play the storyline.
right. My thought is potentially as we go to terminal, maybe again, I don't know. This looks like maybe a BTR hat. Jeez, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to. It's definitely not a BTR hatch. That was dumb. But it is a hatch, 100%. Is it one of the? Is this like as you're leaving Tarkov, they try to leave without you, and you fucking pry the door open, like let me in, Um, I don't think it's a submarine. I think maybe it would, or not a submarine, but the hovercraft. I think maybe this could be a helicopter. I don't think. I don't know.
Yeah,
I could speculate for days. There's so
yeah,
many
it goes
weird
so many
things about
ways.
it. It kind of looks like a ship to me, in all honesty. Like maybe this is when you're like trying to leave, and they're like, "Oh, they're leaving without you. You got to go," and the door's already closed, and like I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know. It could go so many ways. Like Adam said, it could just be a breach animation for new doors and things like that. There's like specifics that you can pick up that bar one time if you're the first person there in raid, and you get to crack this door open like this. It could be a cutscene. It could be I don't know. I
yeah.
don't know.
I would guess more along like story cutscene, like for the
Yeah,
actual like single player stuff would be my guess.
but it definitely reminds me of like you're breaching a door on a ship of some sort, or like prying open a door on a ship, or some kind of like because it is a big round metal door. It's got like the ceiling hatches and stuff like that. And when you go down to pick up the pipe, you kind of see the edges of the door too, which do look kind of like a ship, or maybe I don't want to say the back end of a tank because I don't think they would open that way.
It could be
But yeah, you
someone
could
like
see
breaking
like there's a
into
rounded, but
like
there's
an ice
wires running
rink
up the side.
to.
Oh, they're
It
playing
could be like
hockey.
breaking into an ice rink. Well, no, no, they're going to watch figure skating. There's a figure skating tournament and they're trying to watch, but they didn't have tickets, so this is their only way to watch.
That's possible.
Yeah,
But yeah, you can also see in the animation there's like another door open on the other side, and it has like big hinges on it. I don't know. Something in game related 1000. Oh, where am I going? Something in game related for sure, but as to
yeah,
what or
something that's
how, who
fortified,
knows?
like heavily fortified,
Yeah.
and somehow you are on the opposite side of the door.
Yeah. It's a
At least we
thing,
assume that it's us. That might not even be us.
possibly. And then here's the real giveaway for why we think Nikita might be in the game, or at least a form of Nikita, is this little instance of the hair work stuff, and collaring and moving and positioning and all that. Is he a corporal that's in the cutscene at terminal to kind of like lead us on, or is he a traitor potentially, or is it just a cameo for an event? We don't know. Is it even Nikita? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Potentially, but maybe not. I think the main thing we were putting together is like from that earlier clip of him sitting at the desk, and then we see this a little bit later on. It's like, okay, well, maybe, but who
Well,
knows?
and from what's done right there, it looks like there's a little bit of a mohawk and then shorter hair around it,
Yeah, it
and that
looks like it's
definitely
growing back in.
could be
Yeah,
Nikita's. Yeah, and I could see him putting himself in as like maybe like the leader of an unknown group that hasn't really been talked about yet, or maybe like Black Division, or something that's
yeah.
been
UN, Black Division.
whispered about, but we haven't
Yeah,
really seen much of them in game like that. I could see that.
yeah. And I think it's a well deserved cameo. I think if
Yeah,
you know
yeah, one
if
hundred
a
percent.
creator
If
deserves to
anybody
be
deserves to be
cameoed,
in the
it'd
game,
be
it's
Nikita for
Nikita.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
they. But yeah, it's just a little thing we're not 100% on. We just are kind of speculating there as well. But it feels pretty accurate. Now, this is where my mind just can't process. Um, One, the picture's a little fuzzy. I wish it was not the case, but it is what it is. Two, what the fuck is that?
I think it's satellite.
I think it's yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Is
don't
it?
know.
Maybe not.
I don't know. It's okay. So I'll give you where I was at with it. At first glance, I was like, "Oh shit, why are the clouds parting? Why is it a big circle? What's going on?" And then I started looking. I was like, "Oh, that's not clouds. That's not anything. That's like a bunker." Okay, so bunker door opening, potentially launching a satellite. I didn't think about the satellite part, but that kind of fits for some of the pieces of it and like some of the way it looks. I could kind of see that, or maybe even it's just like a satellite for like tracking this, that, or the other. But then down below, I just can't make out, like, maybe a car there, like, what is actually taking place? Once I kinda started trying to process it, I was thinking, like, the blue flame stuff with the cultists and, like,
Right, right.
the
That could make
nuke or
sense.
whatever it is they're working on, like, maybe some kind of, like, ending ritual thing going on as we're escaping this is happening, or
You see the red light
maybe
though too.
yeah.
The same thing that was in the Nikita photo. That same light is
Yeah, this
flashing. So
is where
this
he's
is
sitting, and you can kinda see, like,
yeah.
the edge of it for where, like, the logic stuff was. Oh, that's what it is, it's logic stuff maybe, compared I was thinking it was, like, a map of some sort, but I don't think that's the case. But yeah, like, that is the same image as what is viewed
Yeah.
back here. So, like, there's some of the logic pathing stuff, and then there's you can see the edge of the round circle opening or the
To
edge of
me
the circle opening up, you can see all the dark blue and stuff like that, you can definitely tell
it
that it's the same
looks
image.
like clouds obviously at the top, but it looks like
I don't think
water
it
running
does, though.
through. Well, I mean, like around the satellite, what I would call satellite. It looks like, to me, anyways, it looks like some kind of like
Like, inside this circle,
satellite
like, out in the
sitting.
blue, there's a satellite out or there's, sky above it, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like all around it. Like it looks like it's a like reversed like collar image or whatever you would call that. A I can't remember what you call that when you take that kind of like
Like, it's
a.
inverted?
Yeah, but there's a name for it, like the actual name. But anyway, yeah, it looks inverted. It looks like the colors are inverted. Um, and I think that's why it throws everything off. Like it's so hard to tell what anything is. But then again, I could be completely wrong. Probably am.
I was
But
kinda
yeah, I don't
thinking at
know. I
one
have no idea.
point that on the bottom of the picture, like, the bottom left of it, like, those were people like, cultists standing there maybe? The blue
Yeah,
in
there's.
the
It
whole
looks like there's
scene
people.
feels very eerie, you know what I mean? It feels like an eerie
Yeah.
vibe to me. I was
Well,
just thinking, like, maybe the EMP launch or something. I have no
that could
idea,
be
though. I
EMP. Well,
genuinely
yeah,
don't know.
blue flame fits.
It could. But that was,
Yeah,
like I think that's a
because
stretch. Not necessarily the blue flame part, but the cultist standing there, I think that's just, like, junk piles or something? I don't know.
I mean, it does
This
look
picture
like
bothers me that I can't figure it out, and it
there's
trips me out.
junk, but then it does look like there's a couple figures. Yeah, who knows? It's hard to
It's
tell.
so hard
So
to
hard to
tell,
tell.
yeah. But it's interesting,
But
I'm
it's
very curious.
interesting that
Yeah,
it's the same setup that Nikita is sitting at.
that's gotta be
So it's
Nikita sitting
like,
there doing the thing, right? Like, while
but here's the weird thing: is the camera was like recording Nikita and the computers, and if that's to put it in game, then this
it
is probably
would be
just
a little
a.
different, wouldn't it? Would
Well,
they have,
it
like,
probably just
motion capture on
be.
Nikita?
Not necessarily. Not if they just do like a straight recording of him sitting there, like not moving or doing anything. You know what I mean? Like if he's not actually like in motion.
True.
If they're just copying, they could just put a full render of him in game.
Right,
If
just
this is
sitting at the
just
desk.
like, yeah, yeah.
He's also been playing a
But that
bigger role in a lot of the, event stuff and, like, the Rizzy lore, so, I mean, I could see it maybe going in that direction.
yeah, there's it's they're placing like some kind of importance on whatever he's doing on the computer. So I would
Yeah,
say this is a hint at something. Who knows if we even been close to what it actually is, but there's definitely
right.
something of importance on that computer.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
it's
you got
worth
the red light
speculating
too.
over.
So this
Yeah,
is
like
not just him sitting working on the computer. This is a filmed event. Like this is something
right,
they put together. There's something here.
absolutely. What do you all think it might be? Because we're obviously a little stumped on that one. This next image though, what's coming up now? This I personally I might be wrong. I think this is the reserve rework. It could be terminal stuff potentially, but for some reason I'm just feeling terminal on this one. That's where
What
I'm
is the
staking my
light?
claim. I don't know. I
That looks like a
don't
bunch of
know.
studio lights on a rack, on a
Right.
circular rack that are all facing each other,
All shining into the center. Yeah.
but it's also hovering. Well, I guess it's latched. I guess it's latched there on the top right onto the wall, maybe, and it spins like looks like
Yeah, and I guess the
a
lights can be
sphere that.
diverted and stuff. They can be moved around, I'd imagine. It's just like,
Yeah, yeah. It looks like they're on some kind of axis, like that can be moved.
yeah. Huh. I don't know though. I am very curious. Like,
Well,
if it
it
was reserved,
kinda.
what purpose would that hold, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what's been keeping me up on it is, like, I don't know if that is reserved because the lights don't make any sense.
It
The
almost seems like
feeling of the air,
a.
like, underground area, the vibe of it, it's kind of reserve-ish in my opinion, but
Well,
I don't know.
it's almost to me seems like like dance studio.
Oh,
Like,
shit, you know what? I bet that was a club. Well,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
But
potentially because there's a
it's
lot of lighting all the way around. It's,
yeah.
like,
There's a
a couple
balcony up
stages,
top.
there's a balcony,
Yeah,
yeah. I could
could
potentially
just
see
be
that
like
as
a
a
light
club too,
show.
yeah.
But that could be like a fighting place. That could be a cage for fighting, like
Boxing or
UFC type
something, but
fighting.
there's so many
Yeah,
cages there's so many stages. Like 1, 2,
it could just
3.
be a big place that holds a bunch of events.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't
Like an
know.
old factory turned into a fucking club type situation.
Yeah. Could have something to do with the new event.
It could
Could
be
have something to do
event
with
related.
1.0. Could have something to do with a new map. Could have something to do with a revamp map. Could
You
have something to
know,
do with arena
we
map. I guess
do have the
it's so
cultist
hard to
event
tell.
coming,
Yeah, we do.
and we have a lot of
Well, the
unanswered
cultist event.
questions entirely about cultists, so I wouldn't be too
We
surprised if they got their own little, like, the Labyrinth had its dungeon, if the cultists have their own, hideout.
well, and since we're here, just we might as well say this while we're here before we get to the lore type stuff. There is an event in not this patch that's coming tonight. There's a patch coming tonight, but then there's a cultist event and then a huge event. So we got a lot of new stuff coming with all within like the next month and a half, 2 months. So all this stuff could be, this next patch. It could be two patches, but it's not far off because
Right.
everything's getting very close.
Yeah, it is. We are
Um,
really winding down on it.
but we are having a patch tonight. Unfortunately, by the time we record this, we won't have the patch notes, but we will probably do a short or something
Yeah,
just to
we'll
get
put
you
something
guys
together
updated
for
on all
it
that.
first thing in the morning.
But also, there was some other news. Nikita did say, he tweeted on the 16th that there will be one more wipe before release. And for some reason, that's made some people's head explode. I don't know why. But so basically, I'm just saying this right
Yeah.
now to say we got a lot of stuff coming, and a lot of the stuff we've seen leaked is getting to the point where it's coming in game now. So who knows like what we're going to get in this next update and the one after that. Expect the unexpected, expect a bunch of new stuff. I feel like we're at that point where things are going to start getting crazy.
Yeah. And just to touch on, since the last half of the episode is going to be entirely about lore and completely off basis from like the current events of Tarkov, The whole thing with the wipe now, wipe later for 1.0, there's one extra wipe in the middle. The It's not going to be like it's a 2-month cycle and then wipe. It's about 5 to almost 6 months,
Yeah, yeah,
depending on what day they wipe for the August update. Um, it could be right at 6 months. It could be a little less than, but it's a relatively average lifespan for a
yeah.
wipe cycle. And
Roughly the same schedule as always.
yeah, even if it was a shorter wipe cycle, it's not like it's wipe for the next patch. It's a wipe for 1.0.
1.0.
So even if they
Yeah,
said, "Hey, here's an August update," and then like November even, which I don't see them doing. I 100,000% think it's Christmas or well, New Year's.
yeah,
Um
yeah. End of the year. End
Even
of
if
the
they
year
did
for
it in
sure.
November and it's like, "Oh, it's only been 4 months." Like, yeah, 4
That's
months
fine.
from the last wipe and we are getting 1.0 at that point. So it's like freaking out about the timeline of them trying to get the framework, get all the updating, get all the
Yeah,
patching, get all the fixes, get all the new features, get all the guns, get all this, get all that. Everything added, prepped and ready and then, have everything set up for that last patch for 1.0. Um, it just feels weird because a lot of the community is kind of like, "What the fuck is going on?" And it's like, well,
yeah,
it's the same thing that's always been going on. We're just that much closer to
exactly.
1.0. And like, it's okay to be
Well,
excited and ready for it, but at the same time, like, this is nothing new, right? Like a patch before the New Year update, like that's how
yeah,
it goes. That's how it always goes. It's what we've always dealt
yeah.
with.
I
I
don't
don't
I
understand
don't
it.
understand. I don't understand. And just to explain what we're talking about, we've had a lot of fellow content creators voice their opinion that this doesn't make sense to have one more wipe, or they don't understand how they're going to fit it in, or they're shocked they announced there's one more wipe before 1.0. And me and Ryan are just like, well, yeah, like we already knew that. If you remember last talking Tarkov, we
Yeah.
actually talked about it, and that's what we came to the conclusion. We're like, yeah, there'll be one more, wipe, and then we'll probably have 1.0 at Christmas. We said that
Yeah.
last talking
Yeah.
Tarkov, and that was before Nikita posted his thing. So I'm seriously like,
It's
I just don't
it's
understand.
baffling. I don't understand their thought
Yeah,
process on that, and it's
yeah,
like
I
not calling
don't.
anybody out or anything. It's just like we don't understand that
Yeah,
process, and at the same time, it
and not
doesn't make
not
sense to us to even
Nikita.
complain about it because it's
The
something we've always dealt with.
Yeah, and not Nikita. We
Yeah, the
understand Nikita.
community.
It's
Yeah,
the people,
yeah,
the people that are like upset or like acting shocked that we have one wipe before 1.0 now. Like, it makes sense. It falls
yeah,
in line. I just don't understand why people are like freaking out.
yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah, we've been talking about that like personally, like to each other, because we were both kind of like, why is everyone doing that? So just kind of wanted to mention it. Like, everything seems in line to us. So I don't know.
yeah, nothing crazy. Let's finish up this and then we'll move on. Yeah. So potential new map, cultist event stuff, potential whatever. We're not sure, but new map for sure, or at least
Yep.
new area. And
Yeah,
then we
knew
have
something.
another look at maybe an arena map. It could be an extension to the map lookout or look that we got last week, I think it was. Or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, but we saw uh some what looked to me like a terminal area. It had a ramp in the middle of the map going downstairs. It had lanes, and then it had what this map also has, which is these closed off areas that you can clearly go into.
Yeah.
So
Looks
for
very, very similar.
yeah, for me, it screams like terminal areas and map layout. I could kind of see an arena map if these doors are inaccessible and it's much tighter than it feels or looks to me at the moment. But yeah, I feel like this is probably terminal related personally.
Yeah.
And then we have a keyboard. Keyboards are cool. If you don't have one, get one. Press buttons.
Yep. That's
And
probably
then
what they're trying to convey here.
yeah, buttons are fun to press. You should try it. Make noise with buttons. And then we're back to the leak of the t-shirt. Well, actually, I
Yeah.
do believe it is a Hawaiian shirt. It is a button down. But yeah,
Yeah.
back to the AK sounds. So, that's the Nikileak for the week.
Yeah,
Definitely
rhymed.
some that is true. Definitely some cool stuff though. I'm excited to see like the AK stuff happening, especially knowing that we're going to be able to build them a little bit differently. And anytime we get map leaks and stuff like that's exciting. So yeah, I think this was a pretty good Nikileak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely happy with it.
I think news is going to start picking up from here on out. So probably going to, have a lot more things to talk about. We've been like dry on news for like the last month, and I think everything's
I mean, it falls
getting
in
ready to
line
pop
with the
off.
wipe cycle.
Yeah,
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 it's like
yeah.
let things die down a bit. We got the weekly boss spawn, so there's something to do in game at least. So
Oh, and
that's always
speaking
great.
of, who is our weekly boss spawn? It is Tequila.
Hey, go to factory, pump out some shots on that fucker. My challenge to all of you is try doing it with pistols. Have fun.
Or Melee.
No. Yeah,
Remember when
melee,
you tried to
melee.
melee?
Yeah, I almost had him. No, that was stupid.
Uh,
Yeah, we were doing a
I
hardcore
hope we
run and
still have
tried
a
to
clip of
melee
that.
tequila. I think I still have it saved. But yeah, tequila's always a fun fight. He is chaotic as can be sometimes, mindless, sometimes absolutely just cracked. Have fun with it. If you need your kills on him, go get the achievement done. Yeah. But yeah, we'll switch gears here. We can go ahead and start talking about the books. So Alexander
Real quick,
Kantorovic.
before we start the lore, I just want to throw one more thing out there, and that is for anyone who's interested and you want to learn a really cool trick and like the new movement that we've been working on. Ryan has come up with a new strategy, and we'll show it to you sometime soon. And
Yeah, there will be a short on it
probably
soon.
going to be
Dropping the tech. Yeah.
it's going to be the new thing. Everybody's going to be copying it, but remember, you've seen it here first.
Yeah, it originated
So
from me 1000%. I don't claim much,
you
but this I'm
guys,
claiming. This
yeah,
is
you won't
big.
know what to do after this.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't have to deal with
But
it
yeah,
because it's impossible to
yeah,
fight.
100%
It makes all your fights winnable.
unguardable,
Yeah.
dropping threes
Um,
on anybody.
but yeah, that's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Just a little warning to all the haters.
But yeah, we've got 3 books that we're looking at today. We're gonna they're all from Alexander Kantorovich. Book 1 is Predator, book 2 is The Voice Behind, and book 3 is The Master of Night. So I guess we'll start with kind of well, let's start with how it started, right? What we know caused the EM, or at least what we think we know started the whole idea of Tarkov and how this city of mayhem came to be, right?
Right.
So Terra Group has more than just Terra Group Labs. They are a multifaceted corporation with business after business after business tied to them. They are very well set up in the means of covering anything they want to be doing and covering up anything they want to be doing. So they had a mining
Yeah.
operation taking place, and they were mining for precious metals, zinc, iron, and copper, stuff like
Copper.
that.
Yeah.
And then they eventually swapped and started mining for uranium, and that's where some people started to take notice.
Yeah.
Granted, all this is taking place during the U.S.-Iraq War, so 2008, 2010, 2012, somewhere in around there. I think actually it says 2010 or 12, but
Yeah, I think so. I think it says somewhere around 2008 to 2012 or something like that.
yeah. So they're doing all this amidst all this Iraq war stuff and plenty of other things taking place in around the world. So they're able to get away with a lot of what they were doing pretty well unscathed and unnoticed. One of their mines, one of the villages in the area were like, "Hey, we are not cool with what you're doing. You're doing this completely illegally. You're not supposed to be on this land, whatever the reason was," and they like subpoenaed them or whatever. Um and that's what kind of brought it all to light. But the problem there was that Terra Group is based out of the Norvinsk Special Economic Region, which is just the new Tarkov city that has pretty much no sanctions, no real laws like in place to keep corporations at bay.
Yeah.
Instead, it's more laid out for corporations to just be in a very neutral or very morally gray zone when it comes to a lot of the dealings and
Rules and
operations
regulation
and
and
regulations and
yeah.
just things that they have to worry about and like the yellow tape that gets thrown up in front of them that's pretty well gone in Tarkov, right?
They call it Russia's gate to the west because
Yeah.
and it's inviting for all these powerful companies to come settle in the region and set up shop there and reap the benefits of the less regulation.
There seems to be at this point, Terra Group has taken a lot of their employees and moved them to the resort at Shoreline, the sanatorium, resort, whatever you want to call it. They move them there and have them work there unscrupulously for weeks on end. As soon as they finish the working, they're sent back into the city, and that's when the EMP detonates. But there's like this whole thing about it, and the fact that like government officials, city officials, and like the police forces and stuff like that, they were all kind of working together, and it seemed very well orchestrated when the event happened. Like somebody was pulling the strings for this to all go down, and I think a lot of it was pointed at Terra Group Labs, but we don't know exactly what. There's a lot of gray area on that side of it too. Like
Yeah.
a lot of things are kind of like indirectly pointed towards Terra Group, or at least, some sort of overseer of it all that's like pulling the strings and making it all go down, who must be very rich, very well connected, and very, very authoritative because they're able to get all the stuff to fall in line to where they can essentially launch this EMP into Tarkov City and evacuate the majority of the citizens, and all this stuff goes down relatively cleanly. Like it wasn't a lot of chaos. Like sure, it evolved into chaos, but it didn't start that way. It seemed like there were roadblocks set up. Everything was kind of organized to a point. So when the EMP was detonated, it definitely seems like it was fully intended, and for what reason we're still unsure of. And that's the big thing with the EMP for me, is like we don't know exactly why they chose to launch it. We just know that
Right.
they launched it at Tarkov City, and whoever's pulling the strings is well connected enough to be able to essentially clear the streets, clear everything out, and set up this idea of a containment zone around Tarkov and everything taking place inside of it. It seems very well
Right.
orchestrated, and there's a lot of questions there, and unfortunately, I don't have
It's
answers for that.
well, I was gonna say it's speculated that basically Terra Group had caught the eye of a lot of powerful people, and they were, hurting a lot of other powerful businesses, bottom dollar by some of the things they were doing. So they had a lot of enemies, so it could be anything really. But like you
Yeah,
said, there was
yeah.
definitely someone who had the ability to pretty much do whatever they want, and they could just set up, the whole region to just, have this event happen and pretty much make it happen pretty easily, it seems like.
Yeah, it definitely did. It seemed like there was no issue with it, and a lot of it sure is structuring for the story, for the game, for the movies, whatever. Um, so they can leave it a relatively gray spot there
Right.
for like the
It'll
who,
probably,
what, when,
yeah,
where, and why, because like the story's still progressing for the game. There's still the potential for Russia 2028, which may answer those questions too, or at least the next
I was gonna
line
say,
of
yeah,
game.
that's probably a lot of the story is finding out the reason why it was all, started to begin
Yeah,
with, and that can lead you in a lot of different directions. So
yeah. Hopefully, we do get some follow up for it and find out like why all this took place, because that is one of those
right.
questions that it doesn't eat at me. But anytime I talk about lore, it's like, yeah, I don't know why though. It's like I just don't know why.
Well,
Um, Good.
and it's crazy because they point out exactly the type of power that Terra Group themselves hold. Because, like you said, Terra Group is the name. They have several different companies like Terra Group Labs, and so it's like they are huge and they got a lot of power themselves. So for someone to be able to kind of undetected and like move in there and do things without them knowing, it's definitely a lot of powerful people doing things, and it's just it's strange because you would think that someone would know something like that,
Right.
because it makes sure it lets you know like how many different people like know what's going on, and like how many different people have spies, and like it's pretty much like everybody should know everything. But
There's still a
I
lot of
guess
just
that's
dark air, like
yeah, I
just
guess that's
floating clouds, right?
something we'll learn. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we might not
Um,
ever learn.
that's true. So the event takes place, and Alex, that's the author. Dennis is our main character. He works for Terror Group, so he was rushed off to the sanatorium, made to do his work, did their work, sent back home. Event takes place, and while they're all scrambling to survive and just get out of the city, most of the people had gotten out. Those left behind um, were either what seemed like Terror Group employees, scavengers and looters, and military is what seemed like were the majority of what was left. There were, in the books at least, it does state there were a handful of civilians that were still on their way out, but by the time a lot of the stuff that takes place to start the book off happens, it seemed to me at least like the majority of the civilian population had already been extracted. Outside of that, so Dennis is trying to leave Tarkov City as well. He's got two buddies sitting down in a car waiting on him, and he runs back upstairs to grab his water bottles.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was
Why?
actually in the
Whatever.
car ready to
Yeah.
go at one point.
Yeah, it was time to leave. And he's like, oh, wait, I'm thirsty. Runs upstairs to get his water bottles. That was the excuse they used, whatever. Some bear operatives roll up, run them against the database, find out they're Terror Group employees, kill them on the spot, and light the car on fire, walk away. Dennis sees all this takes place, realizes, oh shit, I'm stuck. What do I do? And starts kind of looting through the city, doing all this stuff. And this is where he runs into the first scav gang, which is something we haven't seen in game. You could argue Gluhar, Rashala, Tequila, all the main bosses are scav bosses. But in the book, they're described as like Ripper teams and these other things of like large chunks of scav groups. So when I
Yeah.
with they also name a shit ton of scav bosses. Dennis is working with a bunch of different scav sections and groups. They're not all under one coordinated, leader. There's
Yeah, they act
probably
more like
12 that were
gangs in
named.
a sense.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's instead of all being just like scavs, it's almost like just different versions of scavs, and they're
yeah.
not
Like there's a
all like out
hierarchy
to
to
do the
them.
same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're all like just doing different things, and it's not like you see in game at the moment.
Yeah, because, like, what we see at the moment in game, I would say is probably akin to, like, the scavengers that are actually out, like, looking for
Yeah,
food, water, medicine, drugs,
people who don't
whatever,
necessarily belong to a group. I would put like the scavs they're talking about now are more like scav guards or more like just scavs you would run into inside like a boss compound or something like that.
Yeah.
They stay in one place, they got one job and it's to guard the boss. Like that's kind of more of what they're talking about and not like the roaming scavs that we see.
Well, even when it comes to the roaming scavs, when they do talk about the gang portion of them, it is a large crowd, or at least a chunk of
Yeah,
them. Not
yeah, it's
just
not two
one
or
or two
three
walking
in an
together.
area.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's like a handful of scavs. So there are a few interesting things that kind of take place in the books that I'm like, man, that'd be really cool to see in game. And that's one of those things is like, sure, the scav bosses currently, but in the books they name a shit ton of them as well as they
yeah,
describe it a little bit differently. And I understand that for the game purposes, we probably can only handle so many what running around in an area. And like, if
yeah.
they were to have like a pack of 12 load in all at once, it would be a little rough. Especially having them move
Well, that's the
together, shoot
thing.
together, and everything else.
These books were being written in like 2017, I believe, 2018.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they're pretty old.
Tarkov, yeah, it has had to make changes due to, just computer horsepower. Like you can only do what computers can handle. So there's probably things that they wanted to do to follow this, but it was just not possible. So they've had to, not completely change it, but maybe just take it down a notch or so. And that might happen a few times, you know what I mean? Like, so it's
Right. It
not
would be
everything
cool to
is going to
just
line up.
see more scav bosses too, though. I think that would be fun. Just like in the
Yeah,
area, there's a pack of like 5 scavs, and one of those scavs is, a pretty beefy guy that's got pretty solid gun and ammo. Like he's the leader of that pack. Maybe not
yeah.
necessarily like a boss per se, but like a guard level that's got a few scavs around him, and they roam the map. But that's an entirely different thing, and that
Well,
doesn't have anything to do with lore per se. But it would
the
be
way
cool to
they
kind of have those two tied together in that way.
the way they do it now is, every map is like kind of owned by a scav boss, and I think it would be cool doing like you said if yeah, you still have the map boss, but you also have just packs of scavs that have like a harder, to deal with type scav that kind of
Yeah.
runs the group, and you could put them on any map, or
Right.
2 or 3 of them on each map, instead of just like an actual map boss. Just make it a scav boss for each little click. That'd be cool,
Yeah.
and I think they could do that.
I think it would be feasible. And
Yeah,
and it's again, it's not really, I mean, it is connected to the lore, but at the same time, like that's a side note, I think. It's
yeah, it's
not anything
not like
crazy, but it would be cool to
insanely
see.
important.
Just because it would like kind of tie stuff together more. It would make it feel, it would also kind of add some variety to the scavs. Like we were talking last week about trying to find a way to make
Right.
it more impactful for the raid after raid after raid situation. But yeah, anyways,
Well, we're also at that point right before 1.0 where a lot of this might get addressed. So
that's true.
hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll be talking about it completely different after that, maybe.
In line with the scav gangs though, every time that they mention a scab gang and a new scab boss or whatever, they all have hideouts, right? Like they all got hideouts. And even when it comes to the current, if we just look at the current in-game bosses, Killer roams the map, right? It would be really cool if he had like like a legit hideout that had like some of his armor and stuff. Like you could tell he was in there, just to kind of bring it together more. Like this is this man's home. This is where he lives. We're intruding on
I was
him.
gonna say they kind of give him the hideout, as in like,
Kinda. That one
it
room in
isn't.
the medical center, right? That's
Yeah,
the
well, a
like,
couple of
that's
stores,
supposedly his room?
Adidas was like one
Oh,
of
yeah.
his, and but also isn't the room that you use the key card for that you escape in underneath? Wasn't that also supposed to be like his room or something,
I
like his
don't
little
know,
hideout
but yeah,
spot?
I'd heard that.
I
The
I
2
remember
places I'd heard the
something.
most was that and a Deke, and then there's the
Yeah,
spot on in I think it may be Mantis, where he's got, like, that
yeah,
little
yeah,
room tucked
Mantis.
in,
Yeah,
which would make sense. I mean, if it's not out of the
but I
realm of
get what you're
possible
saying.
that he would, like, live in other places,
S-
but not every boss has that either,
s-
though. Like,
Something that's more
just a
like,
little
oh, that's
concrete
that's
area that's
for
like, that
sure.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure his. It's his when you walk
Yeah.
in. Like that's
Nothing
yeah,
has to
yeah.
be
I get you.
lootable, you could just have a couple of odds and ends things that sit there to, like, just show. I just think it would be a cool way to tie stuff together and just make the map
Yeah.
feel a little more livable in that scenario. But yeah, the hideouts thing I thought was pretty cool, like, the idea that there are all these bosses, or not necessarily bosses, but scav gangs in different sects and all this different stuff going on. And there's somebody pulling the strings for each individual group, which is just cool. But it is also interesting to see how the world of Tarkov works and kind of breaks down. There's definitely a hierarchy. Everyone recognizes the traders as kind of like the middleman, essentially. Like they're not the person pulling the strings, obviously, but they are relatively well connected, being able to keep
Yeah.
supplies in pace or in place. Being able to have the ability to know what's needed from who, for who, why, what, a lot of information and stuff like that. So the
Yeah, they
traders
don't
are
necessarily run
definitely
everything, but they're connected to everything.
yeah. They're on the other end of the line with whoever's pulling the strings potentially, or at
Exactly.
least they're connected to something outside of Tarkov, which is more than
They
we
can
have
make
for
things
anything
happen.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the traders are pretty high on that list, and then it seems like scab bosses and some of the raider and USEC bosses, as well as the bear, or I guess I shouldn't say bosses, but the higher ups, because we're not recognized, or we haven't been introduced to any of those guys in the game. We don't know
Right.
anything about that in game. So it kind of breaks down. It's traders and then the higher ups of the different groups, gangs, and military people in the area. They all seem to sort of know of each other and the inner workings with each other, and they seem to be not necessarily connected, but they definitely know each other. Like
Yeah.
one of the USEC higher ups, Mark Forbit, starts talking about the cultists in a way that says that he knows more than he's letting on, and kind of makes you think like, well, how connected are a lot of these guys? But you also hear like everybody knows about Fence. Nobody wants to fuck with him. He's somebody that nobody would ever cross. And he seems to be an extremely terrifying guy. And it's not just the scavs that talk about that. There's leaders in the book who are like, yeah, that's, you don't cross that guy. Like you don't mess with him.
They make it
So
seem like before the EMP, a lot of these people already knew each other and knew of
yeah,
each other.
yeah.
And it seems like each of them already had somewhat of a reputation.
Yeah, and then, after that, you've got your average scavs, but even below that, they have people that are specifically doing the shit work. like your dogs essentially.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of interesting that a city that's broken down so much has also still kept a sort of hierarchy, that there's some sort of laws or at least rule of law in place for the people that still live there and work there, or not work there, but like fight there and like
Yeah.
essentially live
Kind of
through
work.
Tarkov. There's like a law in place to keep things kind of
Yeah.
moving in a decent it's just interesting to see that it's not just this chaotic just mess of each section and each
Right. It's not
faction is
anarchy.
just fighting and just trying to get to the top. Everyone has a place and a purpose, and is kind of working within that line, which is kind
Yeah,
of
it seems
cool.
like everyone follows it pretty much without, like complaint. Like it seems like everybody's okay with the way things go. Or at least most people.
Right, yeah. Obviously, there's people that want to change certain things about things, but for the
Right.
most part, most of the people you meet, they know their role and they're kind of there to play it. Um so Dennis comes into all this and kind of starts fucking up the rotation a little bit. He starts dealing with people that have crossed him. He starts doing different things to for traders to earn rewards, to get better gear, get better stuff, and he kind of plays the idea of Tarkov in the book, which was cool to me as well. Because he's like completing tasks and things to get this, so he can eat and drink and collect this stuff and have a stash and like all these things, and he gets a little hideout and stuff. So it was interesting to see
Yeah.
like the story progression match the game progression, at least in that regard.
Yeah, he's
But
as close as it gets to your character, like at the moment anyways.
yeah, yeah, at the start he for sure is. He gets into a mix with a guy and he ends up getting like chained up and treated like a literal
Yeah, he
dog.
gets treated awful. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't feed him or anything for days on end. If somebody does feed him, it's usually a can of dog food or just like some trash.
There's
He
these girls that he
Yeah,
ends up
yeah.
having to beg, like, "Can you get me something to drink?" And it's pretty gross what she says, but
Yeah, she offers a drink
yeah,
from her
yeah, she's like,
body.
she's like, "I can relieve myself, and you can drink that."
Yeah,
And yeah, I was just when I seen that, I was like, "Whoa,
that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, Dennis has been through it."
Yeah, he really has. But that's good though too, because in the books, like most of the situations Dennis gets into, all the fights, all the firefights, everything else, he kind of like Mary Sue's it, right? Like he's just super badass, never gets hurt, never gets really messed up too bad. But there are a few incidents that take place where he does get fucked up, and he's like
Yeah,
on the verge of death.
absolutely.
This being one of them. But yeah, he ends up escaping from there and kind of like doing this whole task line, gets a bunch of gear and some NVGs and goes back with a couple. This is another thing that I would like to see in game, which we kind of have, kind of not. But he goes back with a faction of scavs, or well, I think it's specifically two snipers from that faction that are just like good shots, and for like days on end, starts raining down shots on everybody, killing them all one after another. They're like partying and stuff, and he puts a bunch of laxatives into their water supply,
Yeah.
and they're all shitting, and while they're just shitting in these crude holes, they they're just getting sniped and everything else. So it's rough. Um, but yeah, so
Wasn't
like
that the part where he was using the SVD or the SVU that he got?
yeah, yeah,
And that's
that thing
a
is
bullpup SVD.
awesome
Yeah, I hope and hope that we see it in game, and it gives me more hope now that it's I know it's in the books, like, and it's it fits the time, it fits the area. Like
for sure.
I almost guarantee it'll be in game, but
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, that's just I just really want that gun in game.
So that was another instance of being able to see just like this the leveling progression, right? Like he completed a shit ton of tasks. He's now in good with this
Right,
trader. Like he's level 2, right? So he got some MVGs. But no,
good
what I
gear.
would love to see in game is the ability to recruit a couple scavs as your PMC to fight with you or for you or something like that, or even like go in and how you can hire support from the BTR, like potentially have a
BTR
scav
and
boss
the
quotations.
rogues.
Yeah, the rogues,
If
yeah. Have like a scav boss in quotation marks there. That you can walk up to on woods, right? At attachment cabin, we'll say, and you can say, "Hey, I need protection," and you can have like a couple scavs that'll follow you around for a while or something. Like I don't know, but I think that would be an interesting feature. I think that would be kind of cool.
well,
It
we
would
know
be
the
a mess,
Scav
I'm
Life
sure.
DLC. is coming after 1.0, and that could be something that comes along with it, like a lot more usefulness for scavs and maybe just some new ways to use them. So
Yeah, yeah, that would be cool.
there's a good possibility we might get something like that.
Um, a bunch of other stuff happens, and essentially Dennis ends up way on top. He takes over that little spot, gives it to his scav buddies. They pass it on to do whatever, and he just keeps Mary suing through the story at that point. But we end up running into a raider boss, and he goes by the name of Ivan the Terrible, I believe.
Yeah, I believe
He
so.
seems like one of the hardest enemies that Dennis has ended up against.
Yeah. Because this whole time
Uh,
he's just been going from like group to group, kind of doing his missions, getting things done, and meeting more people, and just kind of advancing. And a lot of it is just watching him progress, and he's getting to the point now where he's pretty much top dog.
yeah. But this is, oh, this might be, we might have jumped ahead a little too far on this, I guess. But the Ivan the Terrible guy is a raider boss, which I know we haven't seen yet. And
No,
it makes me wonder if that's something we will get. But on top of that, they essentially, he ends up meeting up with another guy, and he also worked for Terror Group. He was a code, something to do with writing code for whatever. They end up working and doing a bunch of tasks. They get a Terror Group crate that lets them, what do they call those giant fucking things? Essentially, another scab boss and him and Dennis get together, and they go and they snatch 2 Terror Group Connexes from the port. And once the traps are disabled and all that, they take all the gear out, and Dennis and Oleg, I believe his name is, go through all this stuff, and they find a key card and a key tool and a few other things that lead them to learning that there are a bunch of bunkers all across the land of Tarkov. And they're all interconnected with tunnels, and they get like they get the flash drive with all the information on it, and
right.
they spend
There's
like a lot of time going through it and getting it, sorted out and deciphering it and figuring out what's what. But yeah, they essentially learned that Terror Group Labs has places all throughout. They are all hidden pretty well underground. There's tunnels through all of them, and the ways in are past what are they call auto turrets and sentries. And you have to have the key card to be able to get in. You have to have the code, this, that, and the other, and that becomes their goal is to break in and do that. But then inside the bunker is completely just abandoned. Um, and if everything's interconnected, I don't understand why they would just leave that behind. It seemed to me,
It made no sense considering everything that was still there.
yeah, yeah,
Like, what would cause them to leave
right.
there? Because it's a hidden
It's
location that
fully
no one
loaded.
even
Yeah,
really knew
it's
about.
yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
got a ton of stuff in it. Like, yeah, there had to be something major to make them abandon that.
And then for only a single set of footprints to be noticed since all the dust settled into, it
Yeah,
just doesn't make a lot of sense. It seemed, I don't know. I found that more far fetched than anything because there's no reason for them to stop using that, or at least stop even going through there. And if everything's interconnected, shouldn't they be traveling through there anyways? Because it's essentially said to us that they do travel through the area. There's still Terror Group whoever's like the
yeah.
cleanup crew, this, that, and the other, and several other big
Well, even
names or
some
big people
scavs,
or hidden people, I should
they
say, like that travel through those areas. So like, why is that completely abandoned and left alone?
even scavs know about some of the bunkers. Like, they know where some of them are. So yeah, that it is kind of weird that something would stay so hidden somehow.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that just as they're traversing through, going from bunker A to L, that they would eventually go through this one. I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, the layout is it just a big circle? Like, who knows? But I just found it a little bit weird. I found it a little odd that something so well stocked would just be completely empty. Why have the turrets on, the sentries on, everything on, up and running if it's so well hidden and yet
Well, being
also
Terror
abandoned?
Group, being terror group, it could have been planned for like a fallback place. They might have had like just hidden doors. Maybe no one was ever, able to get past the turrets, like, so just no one ever bothered it, and maybe it was like a place for them later on or something. Like, who knows? It might have been something they planned ahead for, and maybe it wasn't abandoned. Maybe they just never got to fully use it or something. Like,
Possible,
it,
yeah.
it still doesn't make a lot of sense, but like there has to be some reason, something that makes
Yeah,
sense
I just
somewhere.
yeah, and I'm sure there is. It just threw me off. It was one of those things that I was just on the fence about. I was just like, well, it
Well,
doesn't
just
make
to
the
tell you
most
guys, there's a
sense.
ton of information. This is 3 books we're talking about at the moment, and it's hard to like relay everything, and we're kind of just giving you a very light breakdown. Like, we're not going very deep with everything,
No.
but
No, there's just too
it,
much.
it's it's really cool stuff. So I would suggest that you actually, you know, go through and check them out. There's some good videos that people would put out, like explaining a lot of it if you don't want to actually read the book. But it, we are trying to just, tell you the important parts. So it might not sound all that exciting or all that great or make a lot of sense, but that's because we're trying to put everything into like a short
Right. If we were to sit
podcast, and it's
here,
not easy.
yeah, and this is already going to be a couple episodes because there is a lot that we could go over and talk about.
Yeah,
Um, if we were to go through and actually break down book 1, book 2, book 3, we would be
yeah,
here for hours and hours and hours and just yapping.
yeah.
So I'm
Well, and I
trying
just
to
wanted to
just touch
say,
on the main things that I kind of thought about the books and like the points that I thought were like interesting or just kind of like odd or threw me off a
yeah.
bit, stuff like that.
But if anyone is sitting there and they're, thinking like, I can't follow along or I don't understand what you guys are really talking about, it's very accessible, the information, and it's actually cool to read. It's interesting. It's pretty well written. Some of them, the translations get a little weird, but it's definitely worth your time to look into it more if you're interested, learn more about it, and it's just a cool read.
Yeah, I guess I did skip a pretty kind of relatively crucial part of book
It
1, right?
it's
With the title. Dennis is Predator, Predator is Dennis, right? So
yeah,
people know Dennis as a man that works for Predator because he spun this web of like, hey, this, that, and the other. Um, but the big bad guy of Tarkov is Dennis. Um, but yeah, he's portrayed in book 1 and as at least at the start, as this just generic. Oh, I'm a systems
yeah.
admin for Terror Group.
He was
Like
a
he's
terror group IT systems admin, yeah, and he was just forced to all of a sudden adapt to the changing Tarkov. But in reality, he's a lot more capable than what is led on.
yeah, he was. So okay, yeah, Dennis is starts off as a lowly employee who has nothing, is nothing. Uh, he gets spared early on because he didn't have a firearm. They assumed he was just somebody trying to make it out of the city. He watched him a couple bear guys kill a few scavs and leave their stuff lay. So he later goes back and grabs all that. Which is when he actually gets run in with the trader shortly after that. And at one point between him going to the trader or between him finding the firearm and him going to the trader, he does have a run in with the cultists. They actually kidnap him and are going to make them work for tunnel digging. They're slaves. They make dig tunnels. We don't know where, what, why. Um, but yeah, so he's kind of forced into that. He finally talks with a police officer. They don't specify much about the officer. I don't think it's Caban, or sorry, Calante. But it could be, I guess. I don't think it is, but maybe. And talks with him a bit. He breaks out of his cell. He kills a cultist leader and takes a knife, which is kind of important.
Yeah,
That'll come up later. He takes a knife.
yeah,
From there, he kind of progresses through the daily task grind, right? Like he's just trying to get to level 15 so he can get that flea
all right.
market. But yeah, so he does a bunch of bullshit for a bunch of different things, and in the midst of trying to get a little bit of liquor and let's see, they drop vodka and moonshine. He runs into a scab group working for another guy. and they drop a little bit of the liquor and stuff, and then the guards are telling him to clean it up. He kills one of the scabs, and then the guard comes in, he kills the guard, and then the rest of the scabs are standing there, and he's like, "Listen, I don't want no problems. I'm just gonna take a couple of these bottles. You guys go on about your business, act like it never happened. I'll give you guys food." During that interaction, he gets knocked out. That's where he starts working for the guy, where he gets treated like a dog. From there, he breaks out, gets away from all that, stocks up, stockpiles, eats, drinks, does all that kind of stuff, and goes back to deal with them. At this point, he's made friendly with several scav groups that he can call on to help him throughout a lot of situations. Um, and then after that, he runs into a USEC group. They are fighting cultists out in the streets. The cult is currently looking for Dennis. They don't know a lot about Predator yet, but they are looking for Dennis because of what he did.
And they think
Short
Dennis is kind of
scuffle.
like tied to the Predator somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. But they don't know how or why or to what extent.
Right.
Um,
There was a specific place, a specific name they said, like it was his something, but I can't remember exactly what they stated.
yeah, they essentially just say like he's his like his oh, what's the word for it? For
Yeah, I
somebody that
can't think
runs
of
her
it either.
errand. Yeah,
Yeah,
essentially
exactly.
his
Yeah,
errand boy. But
yeah.
yeah, so from there, there's a short scuffle with them. So he gets good with the USEC. He goes to a USEC camp, talks with not Mark Forbit, but the other commander there. Tells him about the cultists, which is where Mark Forbit comes in, and that's kind of when you start to get a little bit of inkling that the USEC know, or at least parts of the higher ups of the USEC have an idea about the cultists and are excited when they hear about, like, oh, they killed 5 of your men. Well, how did they do it? Like, what were they using? Did you hear them? Did you see them? Like, they were just asking a bunch of weird questions on in lines with it. Like, what can you tell us about cultists that we don't already know? Essentially, um, from there is when he has the run in with that next scav boss, and this is where they get the Terror Group Labs containers, haul that stuff back, and then they start researching. Once they've got all their research and stuff done, they've got their key cards. They found yellow, sick. Let's get a Bitcoin. They decide to go to the labyrinth or to the labyrinth. Jesus, they decide to go to the motor pool and take a look around, see if they can find the entrance in, disarm all the traps. They make their way in. They end up giving a bunch of the supplies, guns, ammo, all that stuff to the scav boss that he was working with. After Dennis had found the way in, they got in. He goes through. They mentioned that there's a thick layer of dust, and nobody's been through this area in a long time, other than this one set of footsteps. And it's just like, okay, give us more. That drove me nuts. I don't know why, but it really bothered me. They stockpile all this stuff out. Well, Dennis specifically stockpiles all the shit out at the door and says, "Hey, come grab this. This is your guys'. Thanks for your help. See ya." And acts like that's the end of, like, oh, it was just a bunker. There's nothing in it. This is everything. Like, you're free to look around, but like it's just this, And they buy it, so they leave. Dennis leaves with like a small backpack of stuff. Him and Oleg make their way back to that point, where Dennis is like, "Hey, I'm going deeper," and he starts looking around, and that's when you find out that there's this massive sprawling tunnel system and a bunch of other stuff going on, and that it's all connected. And that's the moment where my head was like, "Okay, if it's all connected, shouldn't there be some kind of like some symbol of movement through the area? Unless they just don't use this at all." But yeah, I got really hung up on that, and it was really bothering me. But yeah, so Dennis is still not known as the Predator. The cultists start looking for him very heavily. Like, they're visiting the USEC camp that he was at. They visit a boss that they call the Boar and have an interaction with him at an undisclosed mall. Again,
Yeah, it
it's
might be
not
Killa.
specified as Ultra and Killa, but it's kind of implied that it's Ultra
Yeah,
and
it,
Killa.
it it fits.
He tells him, like, he essentially recaps and says, "Hey, do you remember this, and this that didn't, or that the Predator did? Oh yeah, and he murdered one of your guys, like one of your leaders.
Yeah,
So
the
no, we
priest.
won't be helping you. We're not fucking with that. We want nothing to do with this. If he runs into us, like, that's a thing he'll deal with on his own. But I don't want anything to do with you, cultist, and I don't want anything to do with the Predator." So he, the cultist leader that's been going around at this point, or priest that's been going around at this point, his name's Pete, and he has exposed himself as Pete to multiple different people. The USEC commander, Mark Forbit, the Boar, uh, Dennis, and I think there was a bear group that he had talked with, as well as a scab group that he had talked with outside of the Boar. So
Didn't
like, there,
Fence know too? I
yeah,
thought maybe
Vince
not.
knew about him, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah,
But yeah, so like they're really looking for Dennis heavily, and every time that Dennis has ran into the cultist, Dennis has gotten the upper hand. So the next interaction that they have with them is in his old apartment building, and he knew he was being followed, so he went to specifically his old apartment because he knew he had a couple things there he could grab, and then he could also deal with them there. Um, he sets up a bunch of explosives and stuff, which seems to be one of his favorite ways to deal with people now. Setting up traps and explosives.
yeah,
They
which
all make
reminds
it.
you of somebody
Yeah,
in the game.
yeah. They make it to the fourth floor. He detonates the explosives. Uh, they he said the book says that he looks out the window and he sees that there are a large amount of cultists around the building, to which only one or two came in to collect their dead bodies or their dead cultist friends' guns and then knives and leave. So again, I'm not sure why they did that. That was another thing that threw me off. It's like, okay, well, if there's that many of them around, why is one explosion sending them running away when these guys are like unafraid of dying and this, that, and the other? Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
overall,
that's
like, there's very few things that I actually complained about that I was like, "Oh, man, it really makes Dennis seem like a Mary Sue," which, if you guys don't know, Mary Sue is someone who just always gets through combat, no problem, never has really any character development, but is always, like, the badass off rip, never gets hurt, all that. But it
no.
kind
Just
of
to
like
point out again, these books were all translated by different people, so they come off kind of different.
yeah, book
Um,
1 was like a Englishman and, like, a British guy, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
book
British dude,
2
and
seemed
then
more
was
American maybe,
yeah,
definitely more
yeah, it was
Western.
U.S. So
I
yeah,
think
so
book
there
3 was the
are
same guy.
you have the just the translation itself, which causes some inconsistencies, and then you add the different slang from who's translating.
Right,
Throw
yeah,
that
that
in. It's so there are little bits and pieces that just don't quite add up or don't quite make sense, but it's probably due to that more than the actual story.
but yeah, so it's like, I don't know, they Mary Sue him a bit, and it kinda sucks because, like, at least for story purposes, when the character has to struggle and make character development and stuff like that, it always just feels better. It's always more enjoyable, and
Right.
you kind of, like, are able to stick with it more. Um
Well, and I seen they even pointed out that, like, especially in the first book, he didn't hardly have any struggle or any development, and it's like it
Yeah,
got
you just
better in
pushed
the
right through
second
it.
and
It
third.
does,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's still, like, if there's, 10, 12, 15 cultists standing outside and you're in an apartment building, just because you kill 1 or 2 of them doesn't mean they're gonna stop coming at you. It's
yeah. They
just like
don't
one of
turn
those
and
things, just
run.
like,
Like,
come on. But yeah, so especially when a chapter or 2 before, there's a cultist that shoots like a RPG when uh the Predator decides to stop and help the USEC in the firefight.
right.
There's a cultist just standing out in the open with an RPG, and they're like unafraid to die, and it's mentioned that like they're unafraid to die several times.
Well, it's
So
like
I
the
was just
minions
like,
are supposed to
that's
pretty
just weird.
much just do whatever the priest
Yeah,
asks. Like the priest, I could see, trying to stay alive, but
right.
all the
Mm,
lower end or the lower ranked ones should just be able to, sacrifice themselves. You would think, but like I said, who knows?
But yeah, it's just little things like that. Overall, the books are really good. But yeah,
Very good.
so where were we at in the recap? Just so everybody's relatively caught up. They are clearing the tunnels. Apparently, all the recording software that's running for Terra Group for like any kind of log type situation stuff, anything that may have happened on the cameras, stuff like that, that's all getting saved and backed up is going somewhere. They didn't realize it was happening, and somebody caught on that Dennis is, or yeah, not specifically Dennis, but this person is using a key card for someone that's dead, which threw up some flags, which made uh somehow the cultists became aware of that. Not entirely sure. It had something to do with the Raider boss. But they come together like, hey, I hate Dennis. You hate the Predator. Let's deal with this guy. We know he's down here. So they blow a hole in one of the random tunnels. We don't know how close he was to Dennis. It ends up being a little bit weird with the story specifically because they make it sound like Dennis is way down this in this completely different area, but as soon as they blow it and jump down in, he's able to just be there. So I don't know. But yeah, so they drop down in the tunnel and they noticed that they had split a bunch of wiring in the explosion. And they're like, oh shit, we better get back out of here because the cleanup crew will be coming to fix this. And they're always coming for a fight. So again, there's more details and clues that are showing that Terror Group is still very active within the city. Terror Group is still very active within, this labyrinth here, or this maze of underground labs, I should say, these
Yeah,
tunnels and everything else. And who is the cleanup crew that they have working for them? Because last we knew, USEC was the ones tied to Terror Group. They were doing
right.
all the security work. They were covering all of that. Yeah, anything and everything Terror Group needed done, they hired them.
And when you think in game terms, you think who would be working for them? It would be Raiders.
Yeah, yeah, it would be like Rogues, Raiders, most likely. But yeah, it's implied. So that's another thing. It was just like, well, if the Raiders are involved, why is it that they're running from this? But anyways, yeah, the cleanup crews mentioned, but no mention past that. There's no talk of like them showing up to fix this or that or anything else. And again, it's just like, oh, a handful of them dropped down in the hole anyways and decided to push through. And that's where the Predator rips through them with old 7.62 LMG of some sort. I can't remember exactly what he named, but he unloads with an LMG and kills a bunch of cultists and raiders, even though they just said they were gonna wait. And then anyways, I'm not here to nitpick and pick it all apart. I know that's what I'm doing. I can't help it because it's just like it seems inconsistent to me. But yeah, whatever. It ripped through a bunch of them, and then Dennis takes off. Some time goes by, they drop down into the hole again and start chasing Dennis through. And then next thing we know is Dennis dealt with a few of them, set some traps, and then recorded a setup of him like, "Oh, I'm down here, come get me" type scenario. Had some more traps laid out for him. Ends up being a few kilometers down a handful of tunnels. He just like winds down all these paths and doesn't really know entirely where he's going. It seems, but he gets to a door where he's interacted with from someone within Terror Group. At least that's the username that was given. Like that's what popped up was information based on like, oh hey, this is a Terror Group employee of some sort. And they start asking questions like, who are you? What are you doing here? How do you know about all this? How'd you get in? And I think I'm fairly certain that's where book 2 comes to a close, or maybe that's where book 3 comes to a close. But it's like we don't get a lot of answers on that either. So no, that's not where book. I think that's book
It'd
2
be two.
ending. Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be
it'd be
two.
book
Yeah.
2 ending. Yeah. We don't get a lot of answers on that, and then it goes into book 3. But is there anything that we should touch on book 2 before we go?
Yeah, I mean, not really.
For book 3,
Just
he
the UN was introduced in book 2.
oh yeah, UN peacekeepers were
Um,
introduced in book 2.
yeah, because they were not even mentioned in the first book. But
Yeah, book 1
besides
doesn't
that,
mention
I
a lot
mean,
of stuff, which I plan on
right.
going back through. I'm just gonna try to recap. For book 3, it's a little bit weird. Everybody's still looking for Dennis and the Predator. He is still completing tasks and stockpiling up on stuff. And long story short, just so we can get into like the meat and potatoes of what we actually want to talk about, is Dennis kind of comes to the conclusion that the only way he can deal with all of these problems, because he is getting like more and more pressure put onto him. Um,
Yeah, he's got a lot of people after him now.
yeah, you start to connect or we don't. He starts to connect a few of the dots and starts getting more of the pieces together. And of course, there's more pressure put on him, and it comes to the conclusion of I have a way to deal with this. I'm gonna invite the cultists, on one last, like, I'm gonna tell them I'll be here, you be here, let's finish this. And essentially throughout that process of making all that come together, Dennis and Oleg uh took a lot of time and got the sentries, the automated sentries and auto turrets up and running again, and got them set up for a uh roaming mode, I guess. It's a little bit interesting what happens. And he comes up with like an RPG and a bunch of other stuff and grenades and guns and all kinds of things. He hires a handful of scav crews to work with him on this one, and goes through this elaborate process of fighting cultists and raiders and something else. I don't think it was Black Division, but another, maybe it was one of the scav bosses that he had pissed off previously. But it ends up being more than just the cultists, right? It's cultists plus raiders plus someone else. And they all kind of
Yeah, I don't.
work a plan together. At least the cultists and the raiders work a plan together to deal with Dennis. Like, oh well, we know he's gonna be here. We'll catch him here, and this whole cat and mouse game plays out, and it ends in this big open field that's got hillsides all the way around it. So once the cultists are brought into that area, they can't leave that area. Is the idea. Dennis has all of his scav sniper buddies set up and some other scavs with machine gun fire and stuff like that. I can't remember how many. The book makes it sound like it's a large number, like a big force of scav uh, infantry and snipers to help deal with the problem. And essentially everything kind of goes as planned for Dennis. The cultists, show up just like they're expected to, and they start mowing them down, and they funnel them into that big open field where they kill off the rest of them. And Dennis is doing this by using his bullpup SVD, yes, but also the automated sentry with rockets and stuff like that. It gets really almost kind of wacky at the end. I'm like, oh, whoa, this just took a turn. I didn't expect him to have the automated sentries like there fighting cultists with him. Like, what the fuck? He's like launching rockets and throwing grenades, and they're shooting like crazy, and everything's going down. Anyways, he walks up to the dying cultist or something like that, and I think he like guts him with his own knife or something. He says some cool line to him, and that's pretty much how the book 3 ends as well. Like he's back to just kind of living his life in Tarkov, and there's like a quick, here's what's going on now type situation. But other than that, that's pretty well it. That's the meat and potatoes of it. So now that you guys have an idea of how the story played, I did not plan on doing that. I just realized, mostly when you said, if you guys aren't able to follow along, I was like, oh shit, they have no idea what actually went on.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's a really good point
it's a
that
lot.
nobody, yeah. And I'm
Well,
leaving a lot out. Like I really am. That was
there's
literally just like as quickly as I could try to overview it.
there's
But
two
now
ways
we
to
can go
do it
into some stuff
when
about it.
you're talking Tarkov lore. You can just give the Tarkov stuff that is equal to the game or that you would recognize from the game, and if you do that, none of this is going to make sense because majority of these stories have nothing to do with the game. It's kind of just setting up the
Yeah, all this.
backdrop where
Yeah,
you play the game.
right.
So,
Everything
understandably,
in these books is
without
way before we ever get to
yeah,
Tarkov.
without a very detailed breakdown, it's going to be hard to follow. You probably have to read the books or at least watch a recap or something that is like very detailed to actually understand.
Which even
So
some of the breakdowns on YouTube and stuff for that don't go super in depth. They go way more
no,
in depth than what I just did, right? But a lot is still left out. The books are relatively long. There's a lot to them. There really is. But
yeah,
yeah,
it's hard to
go ahead.
just extract the lore out of it and just give you that without giving you anything else.
Yeah,
It's not a one-to-one when it comes to the game and the books. It's the same area, it's the same place, it's the same world, but a lot of the things that are happening are things you would have no idea about if you just played the game.
yeah,
It is cool to know, and that's why I keep suggesting it for anybody that is interested to do it by yourself. Just go either read the books or watch a detailed recap, something. It'll give you a much better understanding of all this. But there's only so much you can do, when you're trying to recap 3 books and,
Yeah,
tell people about Tarkov and how it relates. It's just
right.
it's not easy.
So we can kind of start with things that flow into the game and things that just don't or are not and probably will not ever be in the game.
Right.
Which also kind of leads you into like the speculation of like Russia 2028 or the next title at least. Like, is that going to finish up the story? So the game lore versus well, the game lore in the direction of the game versus like the story in the of the books. Because like the raid movie probably feels the most well, Rizzy Chronicles, but like lore wise, the raid movie is probably more accurate just for like the day to
Yeah.
day going ons of Tarkov. Where this feels like it's just specifically talking about things that happened in the past that set things in motion, and this is just one guy's adventure throughout that process. Um,
Raid and Rizzy are directly connected to the
to
game,
the
so
game, yeah, and what's
yeah,
happening in
it's
the
a
game.
lot, and a lot of it's newer, especially with the Rizzy. So it is, up to date with everything that's
Right,
already
yeah.
happened. The characters are all up
More
to date.
changes that
So
have happened and things, yeah.
yeah,
So the first thing in my mind that I would say is too far fetched from the game is the auto sentries and shit like that. Like, that just seems so crazy. I didn't like it. Sure, it's like the climactic ending or whatever, but I don't know. It just seemed so far disconnected from where Tarkov is. Like, sure, Terror Group has access to all these things and
yeah,
has the power
that's
and
what
the
I was gonna
money for
say.
these
Is
things. It's
I
just a weird
get,
way of using them, like having like this robotic fucking thing shooting rockets and stuff. Like, it was just kind of wild.
I get
And
it
I don't
as
think that would ever be
them
in the game. You know,
trying to point out the power
the
that Terror
power that
Group
Terror
and
Group
the
has. Yeah,
technology that Terror Group had, acquired,
yeah.
and in that sense, it does make sense. But as far
The
as like
usage of
ever
it
being,
mostly. Yeah.
yeah, ever being useful in the game world, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I
like,
don't see that
yeah.
ever.
We were lucky to get RPGs.
Right.
Uh,
Just to point out real quick, one thing when I had just went back over everything, the one thing that stuck out to me a lot related to the game was how the cultists are also very powerful in the story as far as very quiet, very hidden. It seems to translate
very
well to the
accurate,
game. Like,
lethal, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like they're some of the hardest enemies. Like they're very powerful. Like they have a lot of connections. A lot of people know about them. They're not as, like they're not just crazy people out in the woods. They're a very well connected group of soldiers. And I feel like this story relays that almost as good as the game. The game, when they first came out, they were a lot scarier, and they've kind of toned them
They've
down. And
nerfed
we've
him a
both talked
bit,
about how,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, we both talked about how we don't enjoy that. But yeah, I feel like this story kind of goes with how they were first introduced, where they're just very OP.
right,
You're, worst people to fight. They're just not somebody that you're going to win the fight against most of the time.
right, yeah, they are very intense. Very, very hard to deal with, and in the game, they're the same way. Outside of, like, Dennis being able to deal with, like, a leader, which he caught off guard entirely, and, you know,
Right.
all the other interactions with the cultists that he had were mostly I think there was one other instance where he takes out a leader or a priest, but mostly it was just, like, the followers.
Yeah, because
Um,
didn't he steal a knife and he tricked
yeah, that was
one
off
that was
boss 1,
captured?
and then, yeah,
Yeah, he
got him
tricked.
to tell him the
Like
plan
told
and
them he wasn't.
everything.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm a cultist priest, and yeah, like
So I've thought about that too because that bothered me. It's like, well, why would they just like, oh, tell me the plan? And it's like, oh, okay, brother. But I was thinking like, can you corroborate my story and like tell this because he's with Mark Forbit, or maybe it was the other commander, but he's with one of the commanders for the USEC guys. And my thought was like, maybe he was like, oh, hey, I'm trying to explain to them who we are and what we are. I'm trying to convert them. Like, can you tell them like what I say is true type situation? I know it's again, I'm nitpicking, but it's just like there were a lot of things that happened in the book that I'm just like, I need more answers. I have questions that I need answered.
well, is there
But yeah,
anybody that's
there was
really important in the book that you feel like we are eventually going to see in Tarkov?
yeah, so I've said his name a few times already. There's the Mark Forbit guy. And this may be just the book focusing on a character. But there's him, there's Ivan the Terrible, there's a lot of focus on Ivan. There's Pete, the fucking cultist leader. Those 3 right there are mentioned in book 2 and 3 a lot. Like, those are names that are getting brought up constantly. There's a few, traders that have different names, but based on just translating and everything else, I assume there was something there, and who knows what traders were planned, not planned, what the BSG and them actually call that trader, like in the Russian word versus
Right.
like what we say is in the English
Yeah, because
language.
they even have different names to themselves, to each other. Like
Yeah,
some of them are. One was called like the Ukrainian or something,
yeah,
and
the foreigner, and he
uh,
was a Ukrainian. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, do you remember on streets when you started seeing the posters of this guy called the politician? I think Mutkovich
yeah,
was his
Mukovich.
name.
Yeah, I wear his T-shirt.
Is
I found it on
he
streets.
mentioned in these books at all? Or
So
do you think maybe
I
he is another
don't.
person that's in the books?
Yeah, I didn't. There's not really any mention of a politician like the politician like that, and I don't really recall anything about a Mukovic or Mutkovich. I mean, I could be
I just
wrong. There's
wonder
a
because
lot of names dropped. There's a lot of things happening
there
because
is.
they do like expose a lot of information there.
I've
But
just been
I
curious
don't
since they
think
dropped
so.
him. Well, since they dropped him in game, he's been very prevalent. They've made a figurine of him. He's been on T-shirts. He's on posters everywhere.
That's
There's an
true.
actual office that you can go to of his. It's got
That
a
is
big
also
painting of
true.
him on the wall. Like,
Yeah,
so he's
that's a good point.
definitely, yeah, he's important in some way. So I was thinking maybe they call him the
I
politician, but maybe he's
That could
not
be
really a
another
politician.
scenario. Yeah, I was gonna say that could be another scenario where the translation got the name mixed up, or he goes by a
Well,
different pseudonym or synonym,
or even
pseudonym.
you know, politician of Tarkov after the EMP, like when there's actually not really politicians, but maybe
Right.
he's like it's
He's
his
a
nickname
shot
or
caller of some sort. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah, I
just
could
feel
see that
like
too.
there's just we haven't really been given an explanation as to why he's so important, and I thought maybe these books might give a hint or give some kind of info on him.
If he goes by
Um,
a different name potentially, because
right.
there are mention of, the string pullers for one, like the overseers.
Yeah.
I think in one book they call them overseers, in another book they call them the masters. I think depending on what faction you're talking with and what group you're talking with inside that, like they might just have different references for them. But those are like the guys
Okay.
that are pulling the strings, calling the shots, making the trader exchanges happen and stuff like that for so the therapist has all of her meds and can keep a stockpile here, 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 and here. So like there's a strong possibility he could be one of those people, absolutely. And the reason he is all plastered all over Tarkov is because potentially for that purpose, for introducing him into the
Right.
game as just that. Like this is the guy that
Well,
makes
I
things
couldn't help
happen.
but think about him when I was going back over some of this because I thought some of the things sounded like that kind of character, but like
Yeah,
you,
if
I never did see a direct connection.
yeah, like I said, if he's going by a different pseudonym in the games, then yeah, absolutely, I could see him tied to it, and I could see, or in the books, I could see him just bringing him out in rotation now. There's also another trader that they talk about in the books that we don't have in game, but I have heard rumored is coming to the game, and he's like the food vendor. I can't remember what they call him, but they show him in the Raid movie. He's the guy that they go in and talk to there, and then they talk about him in the books too. And he's specifically a vendor for food and stuff like that, food, water, survival pieces that you might need. So there are a handful of things and people, but here's the other with like Mark Forbit or the Raider boss Ivan, depending on who's running terminal, we may see them still. And again,
Yeah, very, very true.
with the name mix-ups and stuff like the boar, which we're pretty certain is probably Killa. Um, I mean, there's so many different names mentioned, and then there's so many
Well,
nicknames mentioned for different scavs and bosses and this, that, raider bosses and bear bosses. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different names named that it's hard to say for sure that we were introduced to several of
yeah,
the bosses, which I think we
right.
were. I'm almost certain that we were.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, here's something I know that we had already kind of talked about, but do you think that Dennis, aka the Predator, is in the game?
are you asking if I think this?
Yeah, yeah, you personally. Do you think that
1000%. I think
okay, okay,
Partisan is Dennis. I think the old
okay.
fuck Partisan who moves quieter than cultists, who is survived too many times and kills you way too easily. That uses explosives
The
and
trip mines,
prefers to
yeah,
use
yeah.
explosives, right? Like that's a Dennis thing
He's
for
cool
sure.
with the cultists at one point. Like they've had their in and outs. Like
He
that makes
seems
sense.
okay
They
with
fought each
faction
other.
leaders, like the scab bosses
Yeah.
and stuff, because they don't seem to fuck with him while he's on the map. And he's
Well, and
able.
if you
The other
remember,
thing, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say we were given a little bit of info that he was pretty much able to call shots like on the maps, even though the
Yeah,
bosses on the maps like would normally. They said they were okay with him being on the maps, which is their reason for him allowed
lines
to be
up.
on maps that
Yeah,
already have bosses, right? So that kind of lines up too.
and then on top of that, he is able to be at shoreline, woods,
Yeah.
customs, not reserve. What's the other map?
Uh,
Shoreline, woods, customs, lighthouse.
yeah, Lighthouse. Yep.
And those are all maps that are specifically mentioned in the books and specifically have ties to the bunkers, or at least for entry and exit to and from bunkers in the tunnel system for Terror Group. So it's like, okay, he has extensive knowledge of the maps that can be traveled for the bunkers, which all the maps have bunkers, but those were mentioned in the books, like talked about a bit.
Right.
He has access and knowledge of the tunnel system, if that's how he is getting around, which is what I believe is happening. He is cool with the bosses. He is an explosive guy. He likes, he loves using his trip mines and throwing his grenades and things like that. And he whatever the first thing we had mentioned was. But yeah, oh,
Well,
he's silent.
yeah,
He's
it makes
quieter than
sense.
cultists. You know what I mean? And he's
Yeah,
deadly
yeah,
accurate, and he outplays the players, right? So
yeah.
in the books and in the game, I've thought from day one of hearing about the books, listening to the lore, reading them, I was like, oh shit, Dennis is the fucking partisan. Like,
Partisan.
I think
Well,
that is
and
what
the
it is.
name
I genuinely
Predator
do.
fits. Like Predator
Yeah.
fits
Yeah, it
perfectly for
absolutely
partisan.
does. Yeah.
Like, trap your enemy. You basically are stalking them before they even know it, and then you're basically waiting for the perfect time to strike. Like,
You're
that's
setting
Predator.
explosives,
Like,
sitting back and waiting for them to kill themselves. Like, yeah.
yeah.
Fuck yeah. I genuinely think partisan is Dennis. I've probably said it a few times on these recordings and stuff, but yeah, I do. I think Denizen is partisan, or Denizen is partisan. Dennis is
Dennis
partisan.
Spartus.
Yeah.
The
Hashtag.
only other the only other thing that kind of had me second guessing that was I knew that they had added the character Din. Um, Once again, he was just a soldier that was added. He has posters that have him on there. He has writing in the game that has him mentioned. He has a figurine. So he's another one of those characters that is already being focused on, but without a reason. And just,
Yeah.
the name being Din kind of just made me think that could possibly be Dennis.
Dennis, yeah. And I
There's
mean, it
not
very well
enough
could be because,
known.
again, well, what we do know, the only thing that throws me off with that is that the books take place before and the
Well,
Rizzy
actually,
stuff takes place a little bit after.
and now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure Din is a bear. So
Den
that
is
would
a
make sense.
bear, or at least
Yeah, I'm
wearing
pretty
bear
sure.
shit, but we also don't know what
Yeah.
he's been through on, because, like, again, he kind of fits that Dennis vibe too, though. Like, he
But I
seems
think
like he'd be
partisan
a good
is
stalker. He seems like, he's pretty well, like, combat oriented. He survives everything. You know what I mean? He kind
I
of
think
he kind
partisan's
of
a
fits.
safe
I
bet
think
though.
partisan is the safe bet. And that's where I'm staying. I just, like, something tells me. But Din,
Okay.
I don't know. I think Din might be a character we get introduced to. Could
Yeah,
be an
yeah.
in-raid
It's
trader, could be a boss potentially coming out, maybe like
because
the
they've
laboratory
started,
boss or something. I don't know, but they pushed him
just like
hard lately.
Mutkovich. Yeah, just like
Yeah.
Mutkovich. It's a newer character that all of a sudden it just started popping up. Um, okay, now here's another question I have for you. The beginning of this whole story, it starts off talking about, Terror Group with the mining operations and the possibility of getting uranium and making a nuke. And then we know there's been clues in the game and hints ever since Tarkov's been out about a bomb being dropped, a nuke being dropped. And then we just got this most recent event, which was the Labyrinth, and lo and behold, we go down there and there's a drawing of a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And not only a drawing, but actually parts down there, like to make one. And some of the
Mostly completed at that. Like, it's
yeah,
well put
yeah,
together for the chunk of it.
right. So what do you think that means? Do you think that it's following the same timeline? Like it's still, even though everything's not the same, it's still sticking to the same theme as the books, or do you think that's just coincidence?
I think that the books and the game are tied together in this event specifically because in the book, the cultists are obsessed with the second coming of the blue flame. Like,
Right.
you'll all see
The
the blue
EMP.
flame. Those who are blessed to see the blue flame. Yeah, the EMP.
Right.
They call it the blue
Just
flame
for
over
you
and over and
people who
over.
don't know, the cultists worship the EMP. Like once
Yeah,
that happened, they were kind of like that was their god.
yeah,
They started worshiping it. So
yeah.
that's when they talk about the blue flame. That's what they're talking about is the original EMP.
Yeah. Well, they are obsessed also with the idea of a second EMP happening, and they repeat that idea multiple times over and over and over throughout the books. They also have, in some of the terminals that Dennis gets on and is looking at. Okay, well, let me spoil this first. So, cultists are somehow tied to Terror Group. We don't know in what way, if it's all the cultists, which I think not. I think it's specifically a couple of the higher up cultists maybe had some experimentation going on with them through Terra Group. There's definitely
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
weird things that kind of like you start to thread a line towards it, and it's like, we're not going to talk about that anymore. Let's move on. So it's
Some of
you
their
kind of get
stems and things, like
yeah,
they have special stems, like so yeah, there's a connection.
yeah, but yeah, it's obvious they're connected. We just don't know to what extent and like what happened to make them the way they are. We do know they could even potentially have like worked on the EMP and were anyways, the speculation could go on and on with that one. But yeah, I think that the game and the cultists in the book, the cultists in game and the cultists in the book, both are obsessed with the EMP that happened and the EMP that they want to still have happen. Um, it kind of just solidifies like that there is going to be an event. I was thinking maybe like at the start of 1.0, that's how they introduce it is like a big EMP or something. I don't know, like just a reset on everything. Just a thought,
Do you
but
think it's going to
probably
be an
not.
EMP and not a nuke, or do you think there's actually going to be a nuke?
Yeah, I don't know because they I don't know if it would be a nuke. Maybe it's possible, right? It is possible. But the
The nuke has been
cultists
hinted, and it's, I mean, been pretty much like from start to finish. It's been a figure in the lore, like it's there everywhere. They put out hints about it, like they had those little codes that they put out that people decipher. That's had stuff about it.
that's true.
Like I said, the latest
That
event
is
has stuff
true.
about it. These books have stuff about it.
Well,
Like there's definitely
they
something.
could also the books could also, hint at the second blue flame while Nikita wanted to take the game in a different direction like you'd mentioned earlier. Things changed about direction.
True.
So the books do mention a second event happening, we'll say, which I think is absolutely the case. I think we're going to have a second event. But another thing that keeps happening in these terminals, that Dennis is reading through these logs about, like, between cultists and between a cultist member and a terror group member, and at the end of everything, it always says, they are already here. So to me, that was like whatever is causing this next event is already in place and it's already ready. It's set up. They're set up. They're waiting for it. But yeah, I don't know. I genuinely think that there's going to be some sort of an event in game that's like the end of it all to reset for 1.0
Yeah,
maybe or
1.0, yeah,
something.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we got,
Like, and it would be a
the
climactic way to do it too.
we got the roadmap, and it has a cultist symbol by the
Yeah.
event, and then the next event it doesn't have a cultist symbol, but it just says big event. So those two are definitely tied together. Um, is Lightkeeper hinted at in any way
I don't
in any
think
of this?
so. I didn't catch it. If he was,
I didn't
there's
either.
mention
I
of
didn't see anything.
Lighthouse. There's talk of Lighthouse. They traverse the Lighthouse. They talk about the tunnel to Lighthouse, or the
Well,
path to Lighthouse. But
the
yeah,
only
there's
reason I'm asking is because when he was introduced, obviously he was. uh, we were told he was a very powerful figure. He had a lot of pull.
But he
He
is
was
tied to the
very
cultists.
close with the cultists. Yeah, very
Yeah,
close. He is a cultist, basically.
yeah.
He has a cultist necklace.
And that's the
He
thing the
gives
book
you
doesn't touch on
access to
is
the
who's
cultists.
at the top of that list for the cultists either. So it's like
Right.
potentially, right?
Well, and that's, the book does touch on the cultists having people in high places.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
could be one of those things. He could be one of those people who basically is talked about but never mentioned by name.
Right. That was kind of my thought too.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that would be my guess.
he definitely seems like one of potentially the overseers that they talk about or the masters. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like he
Yeah.
seems like one of those string pullers that's like definitely involved in like the everyday going ons of like what's
He's
allowed
like
to
the
take
guy
place. Yeah,
who he calls the shots and other people do the work is the kind of the
yeah.
feeling I get from him, you know what I mean?
And him being
Um,
tied to cultists, and again, this is probably just speculation, but he's one of the like my brain kind of went to him when I was reading the pat like the the terminal stuff back and forth between a cultist and a Terror Group employee. And that's when I was like, "Oh, I wonder if one of the cultists used to work for Terror Group, like with this whole
right.
EMP and nuke situation. Like, did they potentially work on the bomb?" And the fact that Lightkeeper, his face is scarred and burnt. I was thinking
Yeah, he's
like
been through stuff.
I was thinking that maybe he's that ex Terror Group employee who had something to do with the EMP and potentially got burnt that way. But again, I don't know. It's just purely speculation. But yeah, I thought the same thing. He doesn't get specifically mentioned, but they do talk about the cultist higher up. The like there's mention. It sounds like him, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of speculation with the books just because like you said earlier too, they're so old compared to where we're at with the story
Right.
for Tarkov now. There's things that change and have been changed over and over. Do you think
Yeah,
that
so
we will ever see a Tarkov where these underground labyrinths or at least other parts of the underground bunkers are opened up from like the Terror Group vault essentially? Like, do you think we'll ever be able to load into woods and go into one of those bunker
I think so.
doors and like
Yeah.
actually have a larger play area than just a small room that we can check for keys?
Yeah, because they've hinted at it. Nikita's hinted at it more than a few times. And if you notice, almost every map now has bunkers.
Yeah.
Some of them are sealed, but we've had events in the past where, we had to go into them, or there's one of the Lightkeeper's task is on woods. You have to go up and guard the bunker that's up there by Sniper Rock, where, you've got to kill 25 PMCs around the bunker. Remember that task was awful? And then they expanded it where
Yeah,
we
they
could actually
fixed
go
it.
all the way
Yeah.
down the mountain.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
right.
so and if you go into any of those bunkers, you see cultist symbols on the doors.
All throughout. Yeah.
Almost all of them have cultist symbols. Even down in reserve, some of the sealed bunker doors there have cultist symbols. So I feel like that right there is enough proof that it's saying, hey, these are all connected. These are tunnels, and cultists are pretty much running them right now.
So
At least that's what I believe.
do you buy Lightkeeper's whole spiel about, "Oh, hey, there's some people poking around these bunkers. I don't know what's down there, but you need to deal with them players or those PMCs," or whatever he says specifically, but yeah. Do
Right.
you buy that or
I
do you think
think
he's more connected to the whole thing than played out?
I think that's once again that's the EMP. You know what I mean? Like that's where probably the materials are being smuggled and things are being moved from map to map. That's probably how the EMP is going to be
Launched and
placed on
placed,
each
yeah.
map. Yeah, they're probably going to, move it through the bunkers. Obviously, that would make sense that Lightkeeper wouldn't want anyone around it because he don't want anyone finding out. I think that just it all ties in perfectly.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I agree. Um, wha how do you feel about Fence being so feared and so powerful? Do you think that that's going to correlate later in game if he becomes an in-game raider or trader, or do you think it's just like a little bit of world building they added in and like I've always
Well,
looked at Fence as like a rat, right? Like he's a nobody. He's selling used gear for cheap prices. Like I never really considered him to be somebody that should be feared.
well, here's the thing. his gear might not be great, but you got to think about it. What's the one person that you're trying to get max rep with? It's Spence,
That's true. How do you
because
deal?
the
Yeah, he lets you.
perks he can provide you.
Yeah,
Yes, he is very well connected. He can make the scavs pretty much, like
be your best friend. Yeah, like you can go up
he
and
can
do a
get,
lot.
if you're a scav, he can get all the bosses to not mess with you. Like, that's him doing that. So
That's
yes,
true.
he has
Major
some major
pull.
pull. And if you look at his description, if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at it in a long time, but it said like he's a shady figure, um,
Yeah, he's
not a
like
lot is known or something like
yeah.
that. So I think more of the he's on the shady side more than like the radish side. I think he just keeps his
Well,
business quiet,
yeah, and
and
I
it's
mean also
I think
selling
he's like a scav boss. If there is a
right,
scav boss, like
like a boss
or not a
boss, like a
scav boss.
over like a string puller.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, if there was like a gang of scavs and like there's like the top guy who's kind of running some of the gangs, I feel like that would be him.
I mean, in the books, he's talked about like he's higher than he's up there with like he's a string puller.
What
It's
that's
just
what I mean though. I mean
I
he's
could see it. Yeah,
over control of not like a normal scav boss, but I mean the boss of all of it. Kind of like
yeah, that's
he
fair. That's fair. Yeah,
calls the shots for all of them. Like
because
if
I
he
mean,
says
also
scavs do this, like
they
when
do
we
it.
was getting
Yeah,
the
that's true.
when we were getting the freaking bombs dropped on us, that could have
Yeah, the
been his
mortars.
doing. You know what I mean?
That's true because
Yeah,
it
that
was
could have.
scabs fucking firing them.
Yeah, it was
That's a good
scavs,
point.
and it's
Yeah,
like there's definitely someone. If I feel like we've seen enough evidence, someone can give scavs an order, and they all do it. And I feel
yeah,
like Vince Rep is linked to scavs. It's just like it just makes sense.
it does. It kind of does. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
It's not one to one as the book, but it does
no,
kind
but
of. You
it
know what I
kind of
mean?
falls in line with it for sure.
Yeah.
I think so. Oh man, I had a thought on it too. I can't remember. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that would be a fair representation. Do you? Oh, that's what it was. It's someone that is able to sell and trade dead players' gear, like dead PMC's
Yeah.
gear. Like that takes
Yeah.
some string pulling too, because most of that stuff's recovered and like stashed away or whatever, rotted
Yeah. Because a
or
lot of
like
people's
tossed
out there
off
looking
or
for it.
yeah, especially in
Because
the city of Tarkov, that shit is getting scraped
well,
up like crazy.
because you're already paying prepper, therapist, and mechanic. Is it for insurance?
Yeah.
Those three, maybe,
Oh, speaking
or
of
no, skier. It's I think skier, not
yeah,
mechanic.
Skier's the other one. Skier's the other one. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Skier, prepper, and therapist. So it's like those three are already getting paid to go get PMC gear, but somehow Vince
able
is
to
still getting
scoop
a
it up
lot
and
of it.
sell it,
And
and yeah,
yeah. So it just feels like he's got a little
and he always
edge.
has
It's
like
not like
those
an obvious edge, but it's a
high
little
end
bit of one.
items and stuff too. You know what I mean? He'll sell GPUs,
Well, that's
LEDXs,
the other
like
thing. If his stuff is used, but at the beginning of wipe especially, if you need something, you sit
you
there
go
and
to
refresh
Fence.
Fence over and over and over, because he's giving you stuff that you don't have access to yet. Even though it might be used, you're still getting items that you need that you can't get anywhere else. So
Right.
it's not always the best condition stuff, but sometimes he's the only person who can get you what you need.
That's true. He does have more power than he originally seemed. I
Yeah.
honestly never looked at him as much, but like after thinking about it from that
Well,
perspective,
it's
yeah,
subtle.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It
It's
is.
subtle, but when you
And
actually put it all together, it does make sense.
that fits the character model from the book too. Like he's got power.
Well,
He's the last person you want to fuck over or fuck with, but
when
yeah, it's
Unheard
subtle, it's
Edition came
quiet,
out,
it's
it was all tied to him. A lot of it, the device that you got, like that, the Unheard device, that was tied to him. So like he's been fairly important when it comes to things that have happened as of late.
that is a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, Fence seems to Fence seems to have it going on.
yeah.
Do you think that we'll ever see the
Final episodes of The Walking Dead.
yeah, do you think we'll ever see the
I already
vaulted
watched them.
episodes
I
of The
watched them.
Walking Dead?
I watched
Do
them.
you think we'll ever see the Black Division actually in game or like this? I was thinking cleanup crew. I was thinking Black Division, but after we started talking about it just a second ago, it's probably USEC, but it's probably like USEC like rogue bosses or something. The way that the
Probably
cleanup crew is
Raiders.
talked about, yeah,
I think it'd be Raiders. I think because Raiders are, ex USEC and Bear that work
yeah, it's just a
for Terror
faction
Group.
of that's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
that's
So
true,
it's like
yeah.
that would make sense.
But do you think we'll ever see a more beefed up crew that's like a much
I think
harder
Black
fight,
Division.
like something? Do you, like one of those two potentially?
If you remember when Streets was first shown off, if I think I'm remembering this correctly, but when Streets was first shown off, there were flags hanging above buildings that said like Black Division. And everyone's like, "Oh,
Uh,
Black Division's coming, Black Division's coming."
yeah.
And
Didn't Caban's area also have flags? If I remember,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it was Lexos. Yeah, it was
yeah.
Lexos. Lexos had flags all over that
And they
said
said
Black
Black
Division.
Division. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yes.
Yeah, yep, that's what it was.
So here's what's weird about that is was Alexos moved? Because Nikita would already have known, the writing would have already been done that was going to
Yeah,
be
that was close to Streets coming
Caban's
out.
area.
Yeah,
And
that was,
that had to have been Caban's area. Like, so why would Caban's area have Black Division stuff all over it?
or Caban was at the mall. Calante was at
I just
the
don't see that
school,
though,
and
because
Black Division was at Lexos. Black Division got pushed
Caban's the
back.
car dealer, though. It's
Yeah,
like
that's
it
true.
only
Caban is the
makes
car dealer. That's true. That
yeah.
is true.
Unless Caban's part of Black Division,
Potentially he
and
does
they just
rock some
haven't
gear.
connected it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe or here's the third option. They just
Caban
put
8
that in
Black
there to
Division.
tease us. Well, that's
Oh.
possible too.
Yeah.
But they could have just put that in there just to tease us and just to stir it up and throw us off. Like,
Yeah, they know we want Black Division. They know we've been waiting on
yeah,
it, and then they
Nikita's talked
introduce
about
Caban
it. He
instead.
said
Yeah,
they're
that's
coming in
cool.
game. Yeah, he said that they are coming in game. And I also, though, we got to think about the bear version of the USEC Rogues. There's a bear version of the
That's right.
USEC
Yeah.
Rogues coming in that are going to be at Terminal.
Terminal, yeah.
Who are they?
That's
What
true.
is that group called? Is that Black Division?
Potentially, but I mean, I don't want to jump ahead episodes, but then in the movie, which we'll talk about probably next week, we do know the whole reason I have a hard time buying that as Black Division is because I was under the impression, which I could be completely wrong, that there was an interaction with Black Division in the movie. But we'll talk about that next week. So I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe I don't know though, but yeah, I do want to see
Well, see,
Black Division introduced, and
I don't think that is Black Division. I was just floating it out there because I believe they had said their name, like what their name was going to be, and it wasn't Black
you
Division.
talking about a Terminal?
It was
the Bears.
not just that, but just Nikita specifically saying like the other faction,
The interaction,
equal
yeah,
to the
okay.
Rogues. Yeah, equal to the Rogues, basically, and it wasn't Black Division. So
Okay. And I think Black Division's gonna be like some hardcore shit. I think that's gonna be on par with cultist fighting, maybe more.
Well, see, originally, once again, it came with that Streets trailer. It showed trucks of people pulling up and jumping out of like cars and trucks. Yeah, and then it also showed the BTR. And these people were running all that basically. So I still think that's the Black Division, and I still think they're on streets, but maybe they're on the part of streets that we haven't gotten yet because there's still another half of streets that is not in the game. And when in the past we've talked about this, when Nikita was talking about splitting streets up, I think that's what he meant. I think that's what they did.
Instead of making one ginormous streets map, take the current street map and then make a new map of Streets Part 2.
I don't think we're getting expansion to the existing map. I think we're getting an additional map like a Streets V2. And that could be, because we never did get to see that. We seen the spoiler of these people pulling up and all jumping out. Well, that was at the very beginning of Streets, and we haven't seen anything since. So
that's true. That's a good point.
There's a lot, man. There's so
There
much
is a
stuff.
lot. Do you think how do you feel about in early on in book 1, they talk about all the Terra Group employees getting moved to the resort. Have you noticed anything outside of Sanitar's room? Have you noticed anything that would make you think that there was
Yeah, it's mentioned in
a bunch of
game.
Terra Group employees there?
Yeah, it's mentioned in game. One of your missions you actually get from therapist. You have to go and retrieve a diary. Um, and I believe she states that she's like it's in the uh she says it's in the place that the terror group people were working out of, which is, up at the resort.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
she confirms that in one of the
Right.
missions, she basically says that that's where they were working out of.
And all the helicopters that are downed are UN
Yeah,
helicopters, right?
yeah.
Which
I
kind
think.
of
I think. There's UN trucks too out back, a UN truck.
yeah. Do you
Um,
think that why do you think UN is there with Terror Group, or do you think that was, like, UN when they were trying to, establish contact with them and talk to them about, like, the subpoenas and things that have happened and all the trouble that they've gotten into with the mining uranium and all this? Do you think that's where
well,
that collapse happened, where that chaos started taking place, or do you think that's just them kinda tying you into the story more in the
I would
game?
I would say it's probably trying to portray a big fight, like a ground zero for a big battle.
Yeah.
Because they even point out, that UN is kind of the same as everyone else, where they're going to look out for their interests first, even though they may
Yeah.
claim they're trying to do the right thing and have peace.
Do
In
the right thing,
reality,
yeah, but within
they've
their
massacred
constructs.
civilians. Yeah, they've done all kinds of things that, basically Bear has accused them of. And it's just, they don't seem innocent. And I wouldn't put anything past, them. I look at them as just another, another group that's pretty much doing the same thing
The
everyone else
same
is doing.
shit, yeah.
Which I only learned that, with these books. Like at first, you
Right.
just think UN, you think, United Nations, they're trying to, get a peace deal or something, when in reality, they're trying to get rich, just like everyone.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But
Because in the book, they talk about terror groups at their, like, headquarters or whatever, or at least the terror group lab, company is at its main place, but obviously, we don't have a way to show that in game, so that was my thought. After I learned it and I saw the UN truck and, like,
well,
stuff like that, I was like, "Oh, well, maybe this is just their portrayal of what took place," because there was this big fight with, UN peacekeepers and some other officials, against the terror group in the USEC, employment or
well,
Jesus,
and
employed USEC operatives there.
and then we also have Peacekeeper, who is basically part of the
AUN,
UN.
yeah,
Yeah. So if you notice, he's usually one where it's like you you can choose to do missions for him, but it's like you don't start with him until later on. He's like the last person you really get in with. So I think that's kind of trying to show that, like everybody else is kind of more involved than they are. Like they're kind of sticking to their own a little bit,
right.
but in reality, it's like they're still out doing the same things.
Yeah, they're
But it's
still
like,
looking for the same shit, trying to
yeah,
find the same
yeah,
answers.
just doing
And
it a little quieter.
we know that, uh, the UN kinda showed up a little bit late.
Yeah,
They
which makes
came
sense,
in, got in that scuffle,
why.
got murdered, and, that's when they finally and this is after the fact, right? Like, some stuff had already taken place, and that's when after everything takes place, then the UN peacekeepers start showing up, and then they're asking the same questions. They're, like, literally going in a circle behind everybody else, chasing after, Dennis and Partisan or, Jesus, uh, Predator, like, they're trying to get the same answers, but they're, like, miles behind a lot of people, just because of how late they came back to it, and it's just like, "Geez Louise." It's crazy to think that all of the same fact or all the factions are doing the same thing, like, it was just funny to me.
Right. Right. It's basically just people
But it
fighting
kind of
over
feels that way in
everything.
Tarkov, right? Like in the game,
It is, yeah, it
it
is.
feels,
Well,
which is
you
interesting.
know how
It's
all
pretty
the
cool.
traders are like turn on each other, and one wants you to do this, one
Yeah,
wants you
kill
to,
Sanitar. Don't kill
n-
Sanitar. Turn
yeah,
these into me. No, turn them into me.
right,
Yeah,
yeah, and it's like so everybody's kind of trying to
like
act like the good one when in reality there's
they're all
really
digging
nobody
dirt,
that's
trying to just
yeah,
survive and be on
everybody's
top.
trying to survive and make money and um but back to Dennis for a second.
Yeah.
So turns out Dennis was undercover, correct? Like a spy?
Oh yeah, yeah. So book one, Dennis starts out. That's actually I'm surprised we
Yeah,
ignored that
yeah.
already. It starts out in book one as Dennis is this lowly IT guy for Terror Group, and the event takes place. He starts having to survive, and the book still kind of makes it sound like he is just just a lowly IT guy. Knows a
Yeah,
little
like
bit,
he's a
like
civilian in transition to becoming a survivor.
yeah. There's a specific part, and I think it's like even chapter one of book one, where after things have taken place, it's like a little bit ahead of time, and Dennis is looking back as he's making dinner or something like that, and he's like, "I know how to, I know a little bit of coding, so if that comes up, that's useful. But I used to camp, and I used to hunt, and I used to cook for myself, and it's like I can do all these things. I could probably even hang a tent up too, or I at least know to sleep under a pine tree with a sleeping bag, like I can survive if this goes on for much longer. And so they really try to portray him as just like this generic, just like, oh shit, I'm in it, I gotta survive.
Right.
Book two, can't remember if it's the end of book two or the beginning of book three, but he stops that whole. Well, okay, obviously going into book two, he's like towards the end of book one, going into book two, he is working on like this whole predator persona and becoming the predator. Uh,
Yeah, he's got his little hideout and all that stuff
yeah.
and
In book two,
starting to do stuff for Fence.
yeah, he's like working with therapists. He's met Prapper. He's working for Fence. Like he's getting
Yeah.
around at this point. And the Predator, he's doing all this as Dennis, and the Predator name is like striking fear all around because he's going into Scav boss rooms, like specifically one on one with them, like in the shadows, sneaking up on them and killing them, and like or making deals
Right.
with them or doing something. He's like being very nefarious and super badass. Middle beginning somewhere in book two, it starts becoming a little more obvious that he knows more and more and more. Like as he starts to interact with the scavs and firefights more, you start to realize like, oh shit, yeah, he's definitely got more going on. But in book three, it's just flat out told to you like, oh, he's a
Yeah.
plant. He is
Yeah.
a fucking badass hacker, soldier, killer guy. Like this dude is the shit.
Yeah.
Um,
Basically, it's not someone learning as they go. It's someone who already knew how to do
yeah,
all of this, and that's
yeah,
why he's there.
yeah. Which
Um,
is a kind of a bomb, kind of not, because like I said, it's kind of
it gets kind of obvious. It does.
yeah, it does become a little bit obvious.
Well, and if it wasn't that, then it gets kind of weird how he gets so
He's
good at it
definitely
so
Mary
quick.
sued at that point. Yeah, like
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, the reason I mention that is because do you think that there's anybody else in the current game that is kind of not who they say they are, or maybe in it for something other than what they're saying, like one of the traders, one of the bosses? Do you think maybe it's somebody actually, you know, just trying to overtake Tarkov and they're out for themselves, but they act like they're working with other people, or they act like they're part of a group, or they act like they're a scab boss, and you know what I mean? Like, do you get the hint of that from anyone at the moment?
at the moment,
Yeah,
not necessarily, potentially, but I don't know. I know that
it's a tough
like
one. It's a very tough one. I don't know. I just was wondering, like, if there's
Mechanic
anyone who fits
is
that profile.
a weird guy. Mechanic's a loner. He loves guns and he loves tech. And I don't know if he's actively looking out to make some big come up off of it. I mean, it is possible. Um, Ref maybe, but he seems to just like violence. Like I don't know though, but we don't know. I haven't read the Ref quest dialogues yet, to be honest. I haven't like been bored just waiting, looking for something to do, right?
Well, it's like
So
most of them seem pretty open, you know, like Sanator's
Jaeger
pretty open about what
potentially.
he does. Um,
Oh, we talking
like
about
the bosses. Well, no, I'm just saying
oh,
anybody. I'm
oh,
just saying
oh, okay.
anybody.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I
Like
mean?
it's everything's kind of out in the open for the most part. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of the bosses, they're like
Um,
content where they're at.
right.
They kind of get
And
their role, and that's the thing about it too. Is like throughout the books, it seems that way too. It's like everybody's like pretty content with where they are.
I get the feeling from therapist that,
Therapist is definitely out for herself. She's looking for a come up.
well, see, I don't necessarily feel like she's out for herself. I feel like she's working with somebody else. And I feel
Oh,
like
that's
she's working
possible.
with, I feel like she's working with like the cultist or maybe even one of the, I don't know. I get a shady feeling from some of the missions that she gives you, some of the
That's
explanations she gives you
true.
about things. Like
Yeah.
she tries to act all good, but then she's also like, you know, like you can't let anyone get this because
Right.
I want to help all these people. And it's like she almost just tries too hard.
She's almost super
So
villain. Like, yeah, like she's like
yeah, yeah. So I feel like in the end we could see like maybe she's way worse
I mean,
than
that's
any of
possible.
us ever thought.
She is very tied in with almost every individual in Tarkov too.
Yeah.
Anyone with a name in Tarkov is like super tied to therapist. So she's got her
Well,
feet in everything. Like her
here's the
toes are
other
like
thing.
on everything.
She's the only woman.
That is also true. She is the only woman in Tarkov at the moment, but we do also
Yeah, I
see
mean,
the
not counting the
nurse
books.
in the Rizzy stuff. Well, oh, okay, yeah. There's also the prostitutes, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Whether
Um,
willing or forced is how the book explains it. But there's women and there are prostitutes, and that's it. So I
right, right.
apologize, ladies, that you've been
He doesn't apologize.
portrayed as
But no,
either a
I'm just.
therapist or a prostitute. So
It's just weird that in the current game, there's only one girl,
right,
and
yeah, active in the game at the moment.
she's
Yeah, for sure. There's one
yeah.
female.
I mean, that doesn't mean anything
No, but it
necessarily. But
is
I'm
kind
just
of. But
that's
at the same time, like when you're trying to connect dots, you kind of have to look at the things that
yeah. It's
stand out
like,
the most first, right?
why is she the only one there? Is it because basically she's cut her way up to that to be where no one else
Right.
like
She's willing to dig
can
that
be
dirt.
there?
Yeah.
Right. Like she's done something that no like it just there's got to be something more
Well, and
there. I
she
don't
is
know
there from
exactly
the
what it is.
start of the collapse too.
Yeah,
She is
yeah,
actually one
yes.
of the first ones set up and like in business.
Yeah.
And the way
And
it's
she's
talked
got
about
her
in the books is
hands
she's
in
got like stashes all
well,
over
and
the
she's got her
place
hands in
too.
every almost every big event we've done. She's had
Her
her
feet
hands
on it
on it
all.
somehow some
Yeah.
way. Yeah. Yeah. Somehow some way.
Yeah, she's digging her
Like
toes in.
she's always involved.
Yeah,
And it's
therapist has
just
nice feet.
it seems to stand out. Like it
Yeah,
seems like
that's a good point.
because
Even for
Skier's not
the
always
fucking
involved.
zombie event, right? Like she
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
"Oh, I gotta have that," Um,
yeah.
yeah, you're right. Skier's not always involved. Prapper minds his business.
Prapper's not
Jaeger
always
doesn't give a
involved.
shit.
Yeah, Jaeger's hardly ever doing anything. You know what I mean? Like, so it's strange. But
It is
anyways, that was
strange.
a
It is.
long tangent about just speculation. But
Well, I mean,
I
like
just
that's
feel
kind
like
of what you
there's
have to do at this
gotta
point, right? Like
be
we just have to
there's
speculate
gotta
on
be
what's what.
some well, there's gotta be some double agents. There's gotta be like a twist in the storyline. I feel like Nikita's probably gonna do that. Just shock all of us, like something like that, where it's just gonna be completely unexpected.
Right. I could see it. I could see it.
Yeah, totally.
I don't. Nothing would really surprise me within like the speculation realm of Tarkov. There's so many ways they could go, and if it's grounded relatively in reality, I could see it happening.
Right.
But yeah, there's still so much more to the books. There's like
I was gonna say, yeah.
whole bits about like the cultist knives, and like how they've drawn human blood, and like there's this, that, and the other. There's like this whole
And
fucking a bunch of different scenes of just like some combat stuff that takes place. There's a lot of just interacting and talking, and just there's so much that goes on throughout these books.
the
Yeah, I don't
Tarkov
think we could
universe
cover it
has
all.
so much going on in it. It's really unbelievable. Like, it's more than a game. It's really like a huge just world that's had story after story, character after character, and it goes deep. It really
Do you
does.
do you think the timeline for um the event happening and then us showing up in game, how long of a timeline do you think is between that? Do you think that it's pretty early on? Do you think it's like, stretched out? Where do you think we show up
Well,
in the story?
I mean, if I remember correctly, by book one, there already are some mentions of rogue Usex and bears, right? I'm
Yeah,
pretty
Rogue
sure.
USEC and Bear factions that are just like doing whatever they want. Shit's already devolved. Chain of command's
And as
gone more or less. There's a few camps and stuff of like the rogues
right,
and then raiders and
but
like
the way the
different
game
bears and
works,
stuff. But yeah,
right now, that's got to be us, right? Like that's what we are.
I
Like
would
we're
imagine.
tied to a faction, but we're not. Like we're working for the traders. We're not working for our faction. So basically, we got to just be a rogue USEC or bear, whatever you choose. Um, so I feel
Um,
like we're early. I feel like we're very
yeah,
early in the story. Yeah,
that's fair. I feel like
at least
we're a few
as of
months
right
into a
now.
year somewhere. Like I feel like
Yeah,
it's been some
yeah. At
time
least
because
as of right
things are
now.
pretty broken down. There's a lot of dead bodies laying around. There's like it seems like things have been happening for a minute when we are at least.
Well, yeah,
Maybe,
yeah. But
we're
I
not
would
like
just
five
say
years in or
like,
anything. Yeah, no, that's fair.
well, and I just mean like as far as being mentioned, our type of character, like that's all I mean by that. Like by the beginning of it, when
Oh yeah, as soon as
Dennis is
shit breaks
still
down.
getting, yeah, he's still getting his stuff together. There's already mentions of
Well,
Bear and Yusek splintering off from their actual group.
yeah, that's
And I'm
true.
just saying that's what we are technically. So I feel
Right.
like
Well, the
we're
book breaks
early.
down the whole USEC situation and kind of goes over like how USEC came to be, and they're telling that story right alongside the uranium mining. And it is essentially just a gun for hire program, right? It's a
Yeah,
military
it's just like
contractor.
you've ever
Yeah,
heard of
they're just
Blackwater or anything like that. That's
yeah,
basically
it's
what it
that.
is. Like,
So the situation with the UN peacekeepers and Bear, I think is what it was peacekeepers and Bear got together to go to the lab headquarters and essentially have a conversation and file paperwork. Uh, and when they get there, they're told, no, you can't enter. They get back out to their vehicles. They're like, all right, we're storming the building. They get attacked and shit devolves from there. And I think like immediately after that, before too much interaction happens, uh, in the outside world, I think is when the event happened. Like I it had to have been right in motion with each other because it seems like those two are tied very closely together. And then everything breaks down, and that's why that's why Bear, USEC, UN peacekeepers, eventually more UN peacekeepers because there's only so many, right? And they had to like
right?
stock up. That was the talk in the book as to why peacekeepers weren't there immediately. I think there's even mentioned
Yeah,
like there were
yeah,
some, but not a group of them. But yeah,
yeah.
so there's PMCs
I,
already in the area expecting shit to go down, and I think that's why we're there so early.
well, I was gonna say, and I kind of took the question wrong. I get what basically you're saying is, at what point is the
You and
game
I, yeah, in
in
the
the
game, like
storyline?
yeah,
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 the
yeah,
game itself. The game is
yeah,
set. I was thinking more like when were PMCs like
right, yeah,
split from the factions introduced.
yeah.
But
But
yeah, if
yeah,
it's the
shit just
game,
devolved
it's
devolved
definitely
immediately after that bomb went off. It was just over. People were
yeah.
like, I mean, that could be we could be right then. You know what I mean? Literally, it could
Well,
have happened, and we're just popping up as it's going off. You know what I mean? Like 5 minutes later, 10
I
minutes later, an
mean,
hour
it
later.
seems like immediately the stuff we're doing is right after because a lot of the stuff we're doing is to find out things and to go
Right.
find things that were left and
The
go
pocket watch
find
is
loose
like old
ends
boy,
and
like dude's
yeah,
friends,
yeah,
and he
it's
wants to get it back to his son. Okay, well,
right.
where's
So it
dad?
seems like
Yeah,
relatively soon.
very early
Relatively
in for
soon.
sure.
Um,
We're letting Jaeger know something's happened. I think that's the letter, right? Like, I don't know.
yeah,
Actually, I should
yeah.
probably read that task
Well,
because I'm curious.
it's
But
yeah, it's something like that. It's we impress is a skier,
Rapper, right?
and
No, yeah, skier.
he or something like that, and then he
They're like, hey,
wants
go.
us to go talk to Jaeger.
Yeah, you can help this guy. Check this
Or
out.
no, it's
Yeah,
not. It's not skier. It's not
it's Prapper,
skier.
right?
It's Prepper. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think it is Prepper. Yeah. You know, someone we haven't even talked about. Poor Ragman.
Yeah, I don't know what his deal is though. And that's another thing. He could be a pretty unassuming guy that
Yeah,
like but at the same time, he seems like somebody who just took advantage of the situation.
yeah. He seems like just a hustler. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
kind of like
I don't
Rashada.
think
You
I
know what I
know
mean?
much about Ragman to be honest. I know
No, he doesn't have a lot of lore behind him.
I don't think he's mentioned once in the books. I don't think he's brought up. There is mention
Well,
of like a
any
well-dressed man here and there, but I don't think
he's
that's talking about
never
him.
involved in any of the events in game. He's never involved in any of the disputes in game. Like he's just really neglected, like majority
Yeah,
of the time.
that's true. He is ignored and left all on his own to sell clothing.
Yeah.
Poor
And that
guy.
could be why. He could just be a definition of an
No name
actual
of
like
yeah.
vendor. Like he's just a legit vendor. Like
Yeah.
he's not someone out there to give you all these jobs and do all this. He just sells you stuff and has a few items, that he can get you and has a
He would
few missions he
yeah.
needs done time to time. Like that could just be his story.
Yeah,
Like he's
I
not
could see it.
really in the fight. He's
Yeah.
not connected to an actual like UN
Faction
or
or yeah. Yeah.
Bear. Yeah, yeah. He just has no ties. But
Yeah,
we're
I
going
never really
on
thought
two
about
and a
that
half
before.
hours.
That's a good point. We are rolling in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But just to touch on that again, I haven't really thought about Ragman. And another one, until you asked that question, I hadn't really thought about is Jaeger because he is involved in stuff pretty regularly, I guess. But he's also very unassuming, right? Like he seems
Well,
like one that's just kind of
the only thing about him is even right when we're introduced to him, we're told that he doesn't like to be like in the spotlight and he wants to be out at his little hideout and he like prefers to not be
that's
bothered.
true. He's
So
just a
that's kind of
loner,
why
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
he's like kind of unassuming. He's a survivalist. Like he's a
yeah.
known to
He
be that kind of person.
that's fair. That makes
So
sense. Yeah,
it's kind of told to us that that's who he is. But then again, he does have some times where he's interested in certain things, and like he's definitely more involved than Ragman is. That's for sure.
yeah. Actually, also, this is off topic from this here, but when we were talking about when we come into play as the PMCs that we are playing, it might actually be later than I'm thinking because we do already have an established hierarchy. We do already have scav bosses and factions and like
Yeah,
it's all
yeah.
even like
It's
within the scavs there's a hierarchy and everything's kind of developed into a state of a steady living ecosystem, not a clean one or
yeah,
anything, but like, an ecosystem that's functioning. So
yeah,
it's like it might be a little bit longer because the way
yeah.
it
There's already a system,
seems
that's for
is
sure.
it's going on for quite some time.
But I
But
also feel like there was probably a system somewhat before it even happened, and most things that are going on are just continuations of the cliques that were there, except the scavs. The scavs are probably the only like thing that formed right after that weren't already there. But even the scavs, a lot of them are considered to be ex-soldiers. So it's like, who knows? They might have already had a little thing going. So
it's true. It is hard to
yeah, I don't
tell.
know.
But yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. We have been going on for about 2.5 hours.
yeah.
We can end it there.
And we could
We'll
go on forever. That's the thing. And yeah,
yeah.
we're gonna have to
Well,
do this
one
again.
just covering the books, like we've even with me trying to recap, like I left out so much. There's
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours of things to talk about, and they are very in depth for what they are. Um,
Well,
but
and we
we
did this because we've been asked to do a lore episode, and it's
right.
interesting. We're into it. It's just
There's a
it's
lot there.
not something that we can just give in a 30-minute, 40-minute episode. It's just
No,
not
yeah.
possible.
This is definitely and this is specifically only covering the books,
Yeah.
right? So like
This
we
is
still have
covering a
the Raid
small
movie, we still have the
yeah.
Rizzy Chronicles, and then we also still have in-game lore from traders
Yeah.
and things we
We
see.
got tons of stuff that's happened in game, tons of stuff that Nikki just put out just by himself. We got tons of stuff that's been leaked that wasn't even put out. We got tons of stuff that it just there's so much content, and we could probably do 3 or 4 more parts of this before we finally
Honestly,
like touch on everything.
yeah, the way this one went, I didn't expect it to even go this long. Because like in my head, yeah, I can go through the books pretty quick. I can, hit certain points of it, but at the same
Right.
time, trying to convey that in conversation while also wanting to still discuss these things and not
Talk
just,
about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of course we could
Trying
sit
to
here for 5 hours and just give you all the lore and tell you frame by frame how this happened, what happened, the names and everything else. But there's videos for that. We're just giving our impressions, thoughts, opinions, and kind of speculating based off of the lore we were given then and what we have
yeah.
now. Um, so yeah, it's just one of those things. It's hard to do in a time constrained format, and it's hard to fill you guys in on everything inside of the books that we're talking about or the lore that we're talking about, and then also give our opinions on it. So while
Well, yeah. If it was as simple as just explaining the books, you'd be better off just to get you an audio book of the book
yeah,
and just listen
yeah,
to
yeah.
it.
So yeah, this is just our opinions and thoughts and things on it like that. This is not
Yeah.
a breakdown, obviously. But yeah, so next week, what we'll do is, if you guys want us to, we'll go over the Raid movie, and potentially the Chronicles of Rizzy, because with the more current lore stuff, it's a little easier to
We'll see.
explain because more people have probably seen it and heard about it and watched it, especially the Chronicles of Rizzy stuff, I'd imagine.
And depending on what happens in game, this update we have coming tonight, depending on how big that is, because if there's some crazy stuff in it, we might have to skip next week as far as lore and
Right.
cover all that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then maybe do the lore the next week. But if
Part
it's just a normal
two will be
update with
coming.
nothing
Yeah.
crazy, well, yeah, we could just start it next week.
Yeah.
And the good thing is we got this one in to get a feel for kind of how to do it, because we're just freestyling on this. Like, we didn't have a plan as the like we had a rough draft. We didn't know exactly how it was going to go, but now we kind of got a blueprint on how to go about it, and probably
Yeah.
present it a little better next time.
Yeah. I think what we could. Well, we can talk about that later.
Yeah,
But
yeah, when
yeah.
we get
All
into
right.
it.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this talk, be sure to leave a like and let us know below if you would like for us to cover the Raid movie next. And of course, if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to the channel. We're on the road to 1K and it helps us out a lot, as well as keeps you up to date with all of our content. Thanks to all our subscribers, and a special thanks to our channel members. We appreciate your support. If you want to see us dressed up in Barney the Dinosaur costumes, consider becoming a member below so we can eat pudding in our bathtubs. Thanks again. We'll catch you next week. See ya.
What the fuck?